Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tetracast. It's a brand new year. It's 2022, and we're back to talk about our favorite genre of video games with you all here once again. My name is Brian Vitale, and we've got the usual crew back in a new year and a new month, ready to kick things off once again. We've got Josh Torres.
New year, old me.
We've got Adam Vitale.
Hello.
We've got James Galizio.
I was going to make a joke about something, but then we had to have an overtake.
Oh, and then we've got Chow Min Woo.
Hello.
So by the time you all are listening to this, it'll be a week and change into 2022. It's been a little less than a month since our last regular episode of the podcast. Obviously, we all had our own holiday break. And just up a couple of days ago, as of the time of recording, we did also upload our Tetracast special episode for our Game of the Year podcast, which is about 6.5 hours of basically our deliberations that go into making the decisions that we made on our end of year slate for 2021. And that's probably what we're going to be talking about a little bit, at least as kind of like a reflection of for the first part of this podcast. Obviously, since it's been, 3.5 weeks since we've met, there's been a lot of news. We have all the things that we discussed at the end of the year podcast. We've got a few features up on the site besides the end of the year features. So we're going to start out just kind of reflecting on that, just kind of talking about how that experience was, the decisions that we made. And then we're going to go into kind of like all the stuff that we missed. Some of the stuff is new news. Some of the stuff is stuff that's been announced for a while, but we kind of want to give a spot to talk about here. So this, as a kickoff episode for the year, this might feel a little different. I feel a little bit more loose, but I think we're okay with that as we kind of, get our feet back under us. So in the last couple days, we've put up 3 major features up on the site. What these features are our best of 2021 awards, basically the equivalent of our Game of the Year picks. We've got our Reader's Choice in Detail feature, and we have our most anticipated RPGs for this year. So I think that's kind of a good slate to run through in that order. Obviously, we're not just going to retread ground, but just kind of go through and say how we felt about the experience, the decisions we made, and all sorts of that stuff. So I'm going to hand it off, I guess, just to pick someone. Just Josh, how are you feeling after our 6.5 hours of deliberation a few weeks back?
I'm alive. I made it through.
Yeah, we all survived.
Like the 6.5 hours thing was basically after like cleaning it up because we had some breaks in there. So like the real recording was like it's a little bit over 7 hours, I believe.
Right.
So
yeah, I got trimmed down in
it was funny because we were using the new Discord plan event feature for this, so everyone knew the date and time. And then like when I was making the description for that, I was like, just set aside. I was like thinking of like a high number, just like a number you never really reach. I was like, like set aside like around 5 hours of your time, so make sure you have snacks, water, drinks, whatever you need to survive at least 5 hours. And lo and behold, we fucking blew past that by over 2 hours of that. And it's like, well, what are we gonna do like this year then? It's like set aside at least maybe 7 hours. So
well, it seems like each year we do this, we kind of come up with like, next year we'll just tweak this thing, and that'll help keep things efficient and fast. So the way that we do our tiered rankings was initially conceived as sort of a way to not have to like get a number 1 and a runner up and a third place. We just do the top 5, top 10 and a winner. And then we kind of pick one for these commendations. But then what ends up happening is that we have these hour-long discussions about what's number 10 and number 11, or what's number 5 and 6, or we end up saying what was a better remaster, SaGa or Near Replicant. And it just if you look at the timestamps, unlike 2020, where we ended up talking about, I think it was writing and narrative for an hour and a half. In this case, it was just like every single section took 50 minutes or an hour. It was just a very evenly paced, slow, arduous podcast.
Well, I mean, but I'll tell you this, like, I think the 2021 podcast has been like one of our best Game of the Year podcasts we've ever done, like hands down. Because everything felt so fully fleshed out. Like nothing was like, well, maybe aside from like best ongoing support, where we joked about that for forever. But other than that, all the other categories and even like narrowing down the top 10, like they were all well balanced discussions. Everyone had like something to contribute, and like it was one of those things that we thought really hard about it and weighed the pros and cons, and we're like, yeah, we can come together and agree on this. Like it was like there was no category besides ongoing support that where we were like, well, it wasn't really that great. Like, especially like I think like 2021, like one of the best years for music for our site. Like that was a really packed list, and the way we did it, I think, was well done.
Yeah, so obviously we have our written feature on the site, which delineates our 7, I believe, category winners, and then our tiered top 10, top 5, and winner. And basically, our podcast episode, the Tetracast special, is kind of an accompaniment to that, to basically say, like, by the time you listen to that, you'll already know who won the categories because they're written out right there. I guess unless you just listen to the podcast from your phone app or something and don't read the article, but it kind of depends on whether you want it to be spoiled or not. I don't know if there's really that much consideration for it. Obviously, the elephant in the room here is what we ended up picking as our overall winner. So kind of some shades of 2019, where we ended up picking up SaGa Scarlet Grace as kind of like an unexpected, maybe unorthodox winner for our RPG of the year. This year, we ended up picking Fantasian. And I don't want to go too much in detail about like why we did that, because that's what the podcast is for. And also, we've talked about Fantasian a fair number of times on this very podcast in the last year. But like James, just how do you feel about us having come to that decision ending up being like our final winner for the year?
I honestly, it still feels weird because I definitely, it definitely deserves it. But it's like, man, it was one of those things where going into it, we didn't really think it. I honestly didn't really think it had a chance of taking the top spot, and then it just kind of happened.
Yeah, I remember commenting like when we were making some very difficult decisions about what belonged to the top 5, we just kind of said like Fantasian's probably there. Yeah, it is. And then it just kind of sat there safe while we discussed like, does Lost Judgment belong? Does Nausea belong? Does does Neo belong or whatever? And it just kind of like Fantasian was just kind of like biding its time, just in the safe zone. And then by the time we had to pick a winner, it's like, well, Fantasian's sitting right there. Does it deserve it? And we all kind of just nodded our heads and went with it. So it felt like the right choice at the time, and it feels like the right choice now. It's just like what you said going in when we started that, 6 hours prior to making that decision. I don't think any of us are really expecting it to be there, but just after the discussion, it kind of seemed like it belonged there.
I guess when we were thinking, it's like it's just not like a very well-known game, and people are probably thinking if it's not really well-known, it's like, does it deserve that spot? It's like every game deserves a spot.
Yeah, obviously it's a popularity contest. Obviously, because the way we do our deliberations, where we don't pull our whole staff, we have a discussion amongst who's available for the podcast, and if anyone's able to leave like comments or write ups ahead of time. That's how we came to our decision, and we had 5 people on out of the 7 present, I believe, that had. No, it's more than 7. We had 5 people out of the cast present that had played it and all had enjoyed it to some extent. For some, it was our favorite of the year, and for some, it was like in our top 3. And just across the podcast, across the averages, it just ended up no one had anything bad to say about it. And we had people who felt less strongly about Shin Megami Tensei or less strongly about Neo: The World Ends With You, and then just Fantasian didn't have that pullback, so it ended up kind of just surpassing everything and just kind of quietly sat and said, I belong here, and no one had anything else to say about it.
Yeah, so when you have a small group of people all opinionated discussing stuff like this, all the other like top contenders had at least one person basically more negative on it, where Fantasian, nobody was like negative on it. Like we all liked it to some degree. So it kind of just won, like you said, just by kind of like average, where it had none of that, it had no detractors.
No detractors, and the fact that it had 5 people present for it, because like Lost Judgment was sort of similar, but it just didn't have nearly the amount of support behind it in terms of people who had played it. So is it completely fair? No, it's not. And I'm honest enough to recognize that, but we can't just require that everyone plays every game.
That's why it's RPG Site's favorite of the year,
Yeah, and that's not to say that Fantasian doesn't have any flaws. It definitely does, but it's like one of those things that like when people are thinking about like weighing what they dislike about Fantasian versus like what they dislike about some of the other games. So the other games on that top 5 just had like more. Well, they felt more strongly about Fantasian pulling ahead because the overall experience was enough for it to be a pleasant enough to overlook or forgive some of its flaws versus some of the other games that have like one thing or one aspect about it that was like it really just like dragged it down. I think that was like the ongoing theme for this year in that top 5.
And as we posted the results of that, as well as the results of our readers most anticipated, I did see a few like some musings or some comments about stuff that didn't place or stuff that didn't win. Shin Megami Tensei 5 ended up winning our Reader's Choice poll as their favorite RPG of 2021, and I think it was kind of like that would have been the safe pick or maybe the expected pick, and it came close. It's in our top 5, and I feel like it was another game that had things gone differently, it might have ended up on top. But then also there's people talking about stuff that was absent from the list entirely. Bravely Default 2 didn't make the top 10. Pathfinder Wrath of the Righteous didn't make the top 10. It's kind of like the Western RPG's big footprint for the year. But those also just kind of fell on people who thought less highly of them. Chow for Bravely Default 2, or Pathfinder only had one person to defend it, me, and didn't really push for it to be in the top 10. So that's kind of, again, just goes back to our results are basically a reflection of who was present at the time of the podcast and the discussions that were made to kind of substantiate our list. So
Yeah, I think the Reader's Choice is a really interesting list because Disco Elysium once again was able to make that top 10 list. I think in the top 10 for 2019, I checked the other day, it ranked at 6th for the Reader's Choice in that one. And that's cool that Disco Elysium was able to still place 2 years apart from its original release on that list. And I think that some of the ones that really caught me off guard was I didn't know that we had such a big support for East 9 for that top 10 on the Reader's Choice. So it's a really interesting Reader's Choice this year.
Yeah, there's some places where we look at our Reader's Choice and we see where we jive and where we align. But then also they had Tales of Arise second, and we had it 9th, or I guess we don't rank the bottom 5, but it was kind of like one of the last couple to get into our top 10. And it's just kind of a larger pool of people making those decisions, and also that's influenced by who the visibility of the poll and things like that. I think we had a few publishers kind of retweet our socials about voting in the poll, so that obviously affects who votes and who sees it and who's made aware of it. But it's always interesting to compare and contrast those, and obviously we respect both kind of results equally. That's why even in our end of the year picks, we very clearly write where each game ended up, both in our picks and in our readers' picks. So,
what really is cool about this year is, I think Adam mentioned this, is that this year was the largest turnout we've ever had for a Reader's Choice poll, I believe.
Yeah, I don't think I think there was a poll before Adam was conducting those that he can't verify completely the numbers, but our social following has grown since 2016, 2017. So it's ostensibly. Go ahead.
Yeah, I haven't had I didn't do the polling before 2016, but we also had literally less than half our Twitter followers then. So it's I'm betting we have more. But ever since I've done the polling in the last few years, this is the highest turnout.
But yeah, can you give us some rough estimates of what are the numbers, what the turnout was this year versus some figures last year or something?
So in terms of raw numbers, I think last year we had slightly shy of 2,000 votes, and this year we had more than 3,000 votes. So 33% jump or so.
That's a big jump. That's cool.
And it was actually the tightest results we've had, I think, since conducting the poll, where Shin Megami Tensei 5 beat out Tales of Arise by 5 percentage points.
It was the tightest since 2016. If you remember, in 2016, our top 2 games in the reader poll were Final Fantasy 15 and Trails of Cold Steel 2, and it only won by 1%. Final Fantasy.
I didn't remember that.
Oh, that's crazy.
Did the new Trails game make the? Oh no, that would have been most anticipated. So the readers poll.
There was no technically. There, in terms of games released this year, there was a port, but there was no Trails game released this year in English. Right?
Yeah, and then Trails of Zero did place on our readers' most anticipated list, behind some heavy hitters like Final Fantasy 16, Elden Ring, and Walker.
It's always really funny to talk about that because as a new release, yes, it is technically a new release coming out, this year, but it's it is such an old game too. Yeah. So the most anticipated, I think the one that really caught me off guard was Digimon Survive. In that, there's so many people that still. We know so little. Yeah, we know so little about it. Maybe there's a Digimon event soon, so hopefully we'll get new info. But hopefully this is the year we see that. I'm really interested in seeing more about it. Especially after playing through Cyber Sleuth, I'm all right, Digimon is cool again, I guess.
And the final feature that went up on the site in terms of end of the year listing is our staff picks for our most anticipated 2022 RPGs. And last year, our most anticipated games, I believe, were Rise and Bravely Default 2. And then like neither of those did very well. So we are
just because we were talking a little bit about this before the podcast, like, we're looking forward to Rise's PC port coming out. This will be your first time getting to Rise, and then I have a lot of friends, who waited for the PC version of Rise. And I was like, why didn't Rise make our top 10? I'm trying to remember it. It's one of those things, like, I don't know. Because Rise was a good game.
It just felt like it kind of came and went to me as an outsider, where World, it felt like once it released, everyone was talking about it. I don't know if it was the Switch only release or if it just didn't change up enough. So I'm eager to get to it once it releases on PC in just a couple days as of the time of recording this and see if any of that, I was pretty like addicted to World when it released on PC in 2020, whenever it released on PC. So Rise, I'm actually kind of like, I hope I don't get addicted because that was 800 hours of my life. If I can leave it to 100 hours, that'll be good.
You can definitely do it under like 150 for sure.
Oh, good. No longer than Pathfinder.
only 100 under 150.
So for our most anticipated 2022 RPGs, we basically polled our staff and asked us. Adam basically held an internal poll and asked all of our contributors to just kind of tally up what games they're most interested in and which games got the most tallies. We kind of listed in no real order outside of an overall most anticipated game. And we kind of had a wishful thinking pick last year for Final Fantasy XVI. And so that's back on the list again. There was a few other titles, I think, Adam, that ended up on last year's anticipated list and this year. But that's kind of you're always going to run into that because something's. Well, I guarantee one of these games. Oh yeah, Elden Ring again. One of these games.
Room Factory 5. Sorry, it's third year.
Yeah, it will be delayed out of the year. It's interesting though, like it's kind of like the Digimon Survive thing, where like the fact that it keeps getting delayed, people are still marking as anticipating it, like they're not like losing interest. So we are patient people. One thing that was interesting was that a lot of our staff anticipated picks are very similar to our readers, but there are a couple absences. Like our staff, we had a Granblue Fantasy Relink, which we will talk about that because it was announced in December that it is targeting a 2022 date, which I know is kind of like, I don't know how much stock you put into that, but it feels like an appropriate time for it based on just kind of like how absent it's been for the last couple of years. I guess it's in a very similar place as Digimon Survive. We've got Stranger of Paradise. We've got Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, that expansion for Rise. Star Ocean, the Divide Force. I feel kind of bad on that one because we kind of like endearingly shit talk it whenever we get the chance to talk about Star Ocean 6. Our overall most anticipated game for 2022 is Triangle Strategy. I think it's just kind of we all have not played a game in that grid-based Japanese turn-based tactics style in a while, and this feels like it's scratching an itch that just has been left unsated for several years. And it has a good art style and kind of a good pedigree from the developer. So I think this was an appropriate top pick for most anticipated, and seems like it's not likely to fall out of 2022. So that's good. We'll avoid that embarrassment. Our wishful thinking pick for 2022 is the Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake. So we don't have any confirmation on a date on that, right, Adam?
Nope, and technically no confirmation on platform either.
So anyone think that anything's missing from our most anticipated list, or what on here are you most anticipated for, Josh?
Well, sorry, let me butt in. One kind of funny thing is on the reader poll, they voted Trails from Zero, like we said. But from our poll, one reason why Trails of Zero didn't rank is probably because like 3 of the people who are interested in it or more, 4 of you, I think, all played it already. Either you played it in Japanese or you played
all of us here, literally other than you, have played it, I assume.
Yeah, everybody here basically played it.
But it's one of those weird things. Like I can't really anticipate it. I already know what it is inside.
So Trails from Zero is in a weird place because it had the, in my opinion, high quality. Well, I say my opinion, even though I've never played or understood the original Japanese, but a very good fan translation that released in 2020, and then Chow and James have played it before even then. I don't know when Josh played it. And I think it's a really good game, and it kind of like rekindled some excitement I used to have for the series, and I will play the official release and probably think really highly of it. And I anticipate that we will be speaking about it again at the end of this year. But it's again, just we've all played it already, and I don't know if that's kind of like almost contaminating the results because we already have like expectations for it, or we already have our preconceptions for what it is, even though it's not.
I'll pick it up again like easily, like when it comes out on Steam and everything. Like I'll still buy it and support it and be like, yeah, let me go check out like how they did on this official release.
I'll do the same. But it's like I already beat it before. I know everything about it, and even the sequel, I wrote an entire guide about it. So
yeah, so Trails from Zero is such a weird spot because the fan translation just preceded the official translation by such a short time, just 2 years in this or 2 years, roughly 2 years in this case. And we'll have the same thing again when I played both of those games with their fan translations back to back in 2021. So now we'll get to experience them again as they doled out in 2022 and 2023 with their official releases. So we didn't anticipate it because we had already played it. That's kind of the only reason it's really absent there.
But back to your question about like what either a game on here or a game that's missing. Like honestly, some friends have been really hyping up the Lost Ark, the upcoming MMO. Coming in February. It's kind of like action RPG MMO, and I played a little bit of like the open or beta to like when that was open to like the people who had like the founders pack. Like a friend gifted me to that, and it's a lot of fun. Like I had a lot of fun with it, and I haven't played an MMO in years, so I'm really I might be going deep into Lost Ark next month.
Like I am really interested in playing that too. Like all my friends that used to play MMOs with me want to play it together. So I think it's a chance to get my old group back. I mean, I love Final Fantasy XIV, but it's not quite the same not playing with your buddies.
Yeah. So I'm. It's like a lot of my friends have like played like the Russian server, and they love it, and they're like, we just want this official release to come out. So they're starving for it. So I'm like, all right. It's like you don't have to like buy into it. It's like there's like a free to play tier as well. So even if you want to just check it out, just based on curiosity, there's like a free to play tier on there as well.
I trust the publisher. I played their mobile gacha games, and people know mobile gacha games are really scummy with monetization, right? So, and I don't know. I played their mobile game Epic 7, and I didn't have a hard time. I mean, I was able to keep up with the whales just by playing daily. It's like, so I feel like I can trust them with the free to play model.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people just play it for free and have fun with it. So I mean, you're not really missing out on a crazy amount if you aren't, from what I understand. So yeah, I mean, I guess like for my pick out of nowhere, that's not on this list. I think Lost Ark would be that one.
And I am just a very basic person where I just agree with the staff pick of Triangle Strategy. That's probably the one that I anticipate the most. I really enjoyed the demo for it from like 10 months ago or whenever that was. So that is easily my pick. Adam, what would yours most anticipated be?
Stranger of Paradise.
Hell yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. What about you, James?
Probably Elden Ring.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And Chow?
Let's go with Sea of Stars.
Ooh, that's a good one. That one didn't make the list, but it is. I believe we have a lot of news slate here. I'm like scrolling through what we have to talk about. I know Sea of Stars is on here somewhere. So that's what we're going to start transitioning into next. So obviously we have a lot to talk about. This might be a little bit fast and loose just because we don't want to get bogged down in too much stuff, especially when some of this news is like 3 weeks old. And in terms of other features that have gone up on the site, some late December reviews. James did put up a Final Fantasy XIV Endwalker review just a week or so ago, or even less than that. Yeah, never mind, only like 4 days ago. I anticipate that we're going to be talking about Endwalker a fair bit in upcoming podcasts as we go through our early sections, and I'm assuming that both James and Chow will have plenty of opinions on it. But James, I'll give you just a couple minutes here just to talk about what you decided to write up for Endwalker. And I know reviewing an MMO expansion is always kind of a very tricky thing to try to contextualize. But just how did you end up feeling about it?
I feel like most people went into Endwalker, especially after Shadowbringers, expecting it to not live up to the expectations that Shadowbringers set. Because like everyone that played Shadowbringers, especially once you got into the patches and you did like up through patch 5.3, it's like, man, what a damn good expansion. And yeah, Endwalker at least as far as I'm concerned, absolutely delivered. Has like fantastic dungeons. All of the trials are really, really good. The zones are all really nice and pretty inventive, especially considering like the variety in the zones that there are. Um, the extreme trials are pretty good. I've only seen one of the Savage raids so far, but from what I've seen, people seem pretty happy with the Savage raids. But again, it's still pretty early, so who's to say like how thoughts and feelings will evolve. The main thing that I kind of avoided in my review was talking about the story, just because I feel like, especially with Endwalker, you get more out of the story the less you know about it going in. Like I feel like almost every single person that played Endwalker is going to be like, man, I didn't expect the story to go this direction, for better or worse.
It subverts their expectation in a good way. That's how I would put it.
Yeah. And like the only real reason I went for a 9 over a 10 is that a lot of people have issues with like these stealth segments for like side quests and some main scenario quests where it's like, oh, you need to tail someone, and then there's like a line of sight, and it's like
There's
I didn't have an
something
issue
I'm like
with it.
grinning right now. Like, wait, there's tailing sections in this. Like, why do
Yeah,
developers
there's-
keep going for this?
They're trying to make like all these like different new mission scenarios because people are bored with the same system, so they try to come up with all kinds of different ones.
I guess I can
Though
respect that.
I do think that one of my favorite missions is this one where it plays like completely different, and people are not really well received with this mission when a couple patch later they've nerfed it, because they don't like that one. But I really love that mission. It made me feel like
I might have felt different if I had failed it once or twice, because then any like tension from the scene just would have been removed, and it's like, oh man, I have to just let me finish this. But I got it on my first try, and it was actually really close, so it like kind of really suited the narrative. But it's like I liked it. I can see why other people didn't, and it's like one of those things where it's, I don't know, like if I'm going to push for a 10, I want to be able to say, okay, I really 100% can say, even if there's issues, I don't think even if people feel there's issues, I can say, oh, well, I don't think it's actually a big problem. But for stuff like the solo duties and the tailing sections, it's like, yeah, and there is some pacing issues in the story in one or two spots, but it's like overall, like personally, I mean, I put it in my top 10 list. That's my game of the year, but man, just what a great expansion.
like, what is it in Shadowbringers? There's pacing issues in Shadowbringers too. It's not all that perfect. Everyone just try to pretend it's all shine and rainbows because it's the ultimate expansion. But there is some pacing issues coming from someone that caught up with the game. It's like Shadowbringers is still fresh in my head. It's like it's not perfect as people made it out to be.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about Endwalker, I'm sure, because they've already updated it like twice since the release. And as an outsider, to me, it seems like they it feels like a game just came out, and the fact that they're already like adding stuff to it is, I think, really kind of impressive. I love that in our end of the year post, we had to like clearly have like a little header saying like best ongoing support. We literally just can't count Endwalker or Final Fantasy XIV in general because it fell as a December game, which is outside of our window for consideration. So it's we'll be talking about Endwalker at the end of this year, I presume, and anything else that comes to Final Fantasy XIV. I know that they're not doing the typical sort of like as far as my understanding is, they're not doing the typical post-release expansion, but they'll be occurring in some fashion as they transition to a new story arc. So it'll be interesting to see like ongoing support in terms of a new expansion, and then even beyond that, a couple other features that went up on the site in the ending waning periods of the year. We did get a review for Voice of Cards, the Isle Dragon Roars. I know Adam's played this. I know Josh has at least played some of it. I don't know if you finished it.
I only played the demo. I didn't actually get the full game yet. I just was in this phase of like, I don't really feel like playing this right now, especially with like some people telling me it's you don't have to rush to play it. It's not like anything amazing. So it's like, okay, well, I can. It'll be there when I get around to it.
Right. So Paige Chamberlain early in January wrote up her review for the Isle Dragon Wars, and I think her response was basically the same, where it has like a really cool aesthetic, the way it really like marries itself to presenting it as a tabletop card game system and really using that kind of framework for its style and for its strategy is really cool. But beyond that, it feels superficial. Obviously, you'll have to read her full review to get her full impressions. But we have that up on the site. We didn't want that to linger and go uncovered. We did also get a review from another contributor, Nathan, for the Neptunia cross Senran Kagura Ninja Wars crossover for those two series. And I know he's a big fan of Neptunia. I don't know much about whether he had played the previous Senran Kaguras, but he thought the game was solid, not great. And he also was able to put up a written review for that late in December, like while we were all on break. He kind of wrote that up for us and put it out there, which is good because we didn't want that to go, to fall through the cracks either.
Yeah, that's kind of like that's coming to like getting a PC release like soon-ish, I think, as well. So it's coming to other platforms. Like so now that we're on the topic of like Neptunia, very briefly, like I know they're putting out this like game called like Top Nep or Top Nep Gear. It's literally just a fucking space harrier game, new space harrier game with a Neptunia skin on top of it, which is really funny. So like, all right, sure.
And we also have 3 more reviews that went up on the site, and all of these games were talked about kind of at some length on the end of the year podcast. And that is, Josh put up a Super Robot Wars 30 review.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much said what I thought about that game. Like, really praised it for like its the structure, the narrative structure that I went for that I've talked about in this podcast. When I was playing through it. So I'm glad that like the game that like the one SRW game that finally came out to like officially everywhere, like it was a pretty solid one. Like I liked it a lot. I'm really curious to see what they're gonna do next. Like yeah, because there's like a lot of like staff changes with that studio, and seeing where the series is gonna go next is gonna be really interesting. It's like it's how I feel. It's the same feeling that I have about like stuff like RGG Studio with staff changes there, and Atlas. It's cool, pretty cool.
Yeah, it'll be an interesting year to see like all this new blood in some of these like
Mhm.
really legacy, development houses, and see if we can. It'll probably be like a long tail before we see like whether that shifts like their presentation or what we sort of expect from RGG or from Atlas. But it'll be interesting to see how that kind of carries forward into this year and beyond. We also got a review from James for Undernauts Labyrinth of Yomi, which just barely got eked out of our top 10. And I do know since publishing this, Adam has also played it. So another one of those releases that we talked about at length, kind of with the end of the year podcast. But
I'll give a little bit something for our listeners, because I just want to let you know, people, that it literally for like the quote unquote top 10 spot, even though like the bottom 5 is unranked on our top 10 list, the 10 spot literally came down to either Undernauts or Tales of Arise.
Yeah. And I think it kind of ran into the same thing again, where just more people had played Arise. We had like 4 or 5 that had played Arise. And I think at the time, James was hadn't gotten quite, he got to it like the day after, but like James was the only one vouching for Undernauts, even though I know he felt strongly about it, as he wrote in his review. I don't know if you have any like final concluding thoughts you wanted to add to what you had already written up, James.
Nothing really too much. I pretty much said everything I need to say in that review and during the Game of the Year podcast.
So a very good game. If I can make time for it, it'd be nice. I'm not very experienced with dungeon crawlers, and I know Adam has also played it as well. Do you have any like 1-sentence thoughts on what you played on Undernauts over the break?
It's probably the easiest game to recommend out of all of the experienced RPGs, because it is a good game and it doesn't have I think Stranger of Sword City, which was my favorite of the developers' output, it has some really interesting ideas and some really cool art and some really fun dungeons and gameplay, but there are some big caveats in it with some of its mechanics, like how characters are revived, and also I think the story just kind of ends on a whimper. Whereas I think Undernauts is very, very good as well, but it's much more approachable and doesn't have any big caveats like Stranger of Sword City does. And I think the story ends a little bit better than Stranger of Sword City does. So it's like, if it's not my new favorite, it's like number 2. Mm-hmm. So, and it's easier to recommend.
And then after our last regular episode of the podcast, but before our Game of the Year podcast, Adam wrote up his review on Wildermyth. And you had kind of talked about what you thought on that podcast, but you did. I just wanted to give you your due here and say that you did also formally write it up as a review. So, any other final thoughts on it? Just kind of it is what it is.
So this is one of those things I'm sort of interested to see how. So the big hook to Wildermyth was its procedural storytelling. And what's kind of funny was like when I was thinking about how to describe the game, I sort of was thinking like, what do you call these like little snippets of story that are stitched together to kind of create a narrative that's not like, it's like each individual part is bespoke, but how it comes together is not, because it's just sort of automatically generated. It's just kind of stitched together depending on randomness and what you do. And I didn't really come away from that all too positive. But I know like games like Weird West, which is coming up in a few months, they are actually talking about how their story works. And it's also procedurally generated in a way that there's random events that occur in certain places in that game. And the person who was talking about it actually called them storylets, like packet-only storylet was the wording they used.
Has that ever been used before? Is that
I don't know.
A word?
They were calling them storylets, and I actually have a friend who was like, I can't deal with this. Like, I can't deal with the word storylet. But I'm curious.
You have to make sure that term never catches on.
I'm curious to see like games that try this sort of, Weird West is an immersive sim, and immersive sims have always sort of had that. Things can sort of happen kind of semi-randomly, and it's unique for each person who plays it. But Weird West is one of the things it's apparently going for, is to make every experience unique from every player, and using these storylets. So I'm curious to see games going forward that kind of approach this sort of procedural, random, like the story you get is a story that no one else is going to get, and how well it works.
It feels like it's kind of a sister or companion to emergent storytelling, where you're like, oh, I was doing this thing and I don't know, Prey or Dishonored, and I had this really cool, like really tense experience not because of something the writers wrote, but just because of the way the systems function and how like I had this really cool, like tense moment, but I was able to get through it because I interfaced with the game in this particular way. It almost seems like Wildermyth and Weird West are kind of like designed emergent storytelling, which is kind of it seems like a very tricky thing to nail and not feel like it's arbitrary or modular. I'm actually pretty interested in Weird West. For
those who aren't aware, the creative director, key to the lead behind Weird West, is the same one for Prey. So it's kind of it's valid that you brought that up.
Okay, I didn't even know.
Weird West. It seems really cool. It also we're gonna get to this later, but it was one of those things that like it was like its original release date was like is either now or like very close, but then they delayed it all the way back to like late March. So it's like. And it was like very close to like its initial release date too. So it was like, oh, well, okay.
And then not a new release, but also a game that released in December was the PC port for Final Fantasy VII Remake, our game of the year, 2 years ago. And Chow was able to play through that on PC. So obviously you kind of wrote up what your experience was with the PC version of that game. It seems like it's kind of limited, but functionally fine. How was your experience with Final Fantasy VII Remake?
I think it's fantastic, but I know a lot of people disagree with that. I know
it's one of those things that, like, yeah, it seems like your case is either like in the minority or like because I've heard nothing but problems about this PC port as well.
I also heard like a lot of the problems is like people using 3000 series cards. I don't have a 3000 series card because they had this dynamic scaling resolution problem where the game is trying to like manually adjust the resolution for you, causing stutters.
Yeah,
but I didn't have any of those issues. I even recorded a video to prove it. It's like,
So it seems like one of those weird things, like with the near PC replicant PC port, where like having like somewhat aged old hardware that works out better for you in this port, like that.
Like I even tested with a different machine too. Like I tested with a laptop, which has more moderate specs, and that works too, right?
Yeah. So it's
my similar experience was playing the PC port of Horizon Zero Dawn, and I didn't have any problems. And then that game came out, and people were just lambasting all the issues they had. And I felt like, did I miss something? Like, am I just stupid? Like, did I or whatever? But then I remember when that game came out, Durante basically had his like tips for experiencing Horizon Zero Dawn at the best possible, like how your computer should be configured to do this in the best possible way. And all of his tips were things like I was already doing. So I'm like, oh, maybe that explains it. So whenever we review PC games and I see that my experience doesn't match what others experience, or even reading like Chow's impressions here and realize they don't match, it seems like what a lot of people are having issues with, that's just the inherent difficulty of, you know, variable hardware and even software and like what operating system you're running or whatever, whether you're running like overclocking things or monitors or all the other things that people try to tweak and change. And like I didn't realize that I had this issue that, you know, that was, you know, unique to my setup or whatever. So PC ports are hard to analyze. But was this
it also just sucks because like in cases like this, it's always up to the community to be like, all right, well, we'll fix it like in 2 to 3 days, and we're like, you don't understand why the publisher or the developer of this port like didn't go this path. It's like it always seems to end up with the community be like, all right, we'll fucking fix your mistakes because you gave us our PC release. You know, it sucks. It sucks that it has to be like that, but that's what it is.
But Chow, just on the game itself, was that your first time playing Final Fantasy VII Remake?
No, I played the PlayStation 4 version. Like
right.
even a laptop that has like moderate spec, it's still better than the PS4 version. Like the only problem is the game's steep price. Like it's at like $95 Canadian. You know, it's like well, it's hard to justify buying that for something that you can, you know, if you don't want this computer experience, you could buy like a cheap PS4 version for like $30. And if you own a PS5, you technically could get it for like $50, right?
You get it for free right now either way if you have PS Plus, because they upgraded the PS Plus access of Final Fantasy VII Remake to Remake Intergrade if you got that. If you claim PS Plus.
So technically you're getting scammed as a PC gamer, technically.
Well, like I was one of the dumbasses that shelled out for the Epic Game Store version of the Kingdom Hearts games, like $200 in total for all 4, instead of getting like the collection so far on PlayStation. And I have not played any of them because I am dumb.
All right.
So
nice.
we make good decisions here.
But yeah, I mean, I'm fine with this port. I'm happy with it. It's just what I wrote is different than what other people seem to have. And, you know, it feels like 50-50. Like some people say it's good, some people say it's bad. Though there is a universal thing is that there is not much options there. And I think the reason why there isn't much option there is they probably just want to set it, oh, this is what the PlayStation 4 version was like. This is the PS5 version. Boom, that's it. There's no tweaking for more fine-tuning settings in the game.
Yeah, so like with any PC port thing, your mileage will vary because you don't have the same exact hardware, most likely, than, you know. And even then... I feel like...
Go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say that I know people make a big deal about which like PC storefront a game goes to, but I think one argument that does have some merit is that when you're taking an exclusivity deal for Epic and you're being paid up front, it does kind of disincentivize putting as much work into the port because you can just kind of put it out there because you're already expecting to make your money through the agreement. And it's like, I don't know, it just kind of stands out to me. Which is weird because the Kingdom Hearts ports were really good. And I'm not sure if maybe that was like just Disney breathing down their necks or what.
Square Enix has like no consistency when it comes to ports. Like, though this released SaGa Frontier remastered and Trials of Mana, or not Trials of Mana, Legend of Mana remastered up on Steam.
Legend of Mana, yeah, wasn't Legend of Mana like a bad port too? Because it had like
Legend of Mana. It seems like it runs into that problem where it's actually so low spec that if you have a high-end GPU, you have more problems than if you had like a low-end GPU, where like your GPUs are something like go into like power saving mode or power cycling or whatever it is, and like it just makes it very weird in playing it. When I played the Legend of Mana PC port, it was very, very sluggish. I don't know if they fixed it or not.
And then like Nier Replicant was day and date on Steam with a few issues, but then Neo the World Ends With You was late on Epic and I think was fine. And then Kingdom Hearts, like you said, was excellent. And then Final Fantasy VII Remake was meager. It just, there is no, like a Square Enix PC port, it's literally just like a grab bag. Like, will it be on time or late? Will it be fully featured or not?
Their Western, like, you know, publishing side seems to have better PC ports, like Guardians of the Galaxy. I have I know there were some launch PC issues, but they got ironed out pretty fast. And obviously the Deus Ex games were largely fine. Yeah. So Wow. No, what we're saying is Forspoken is going to be the best PC port they'll do in 2022. Obviously.
Speaking of Square Enix PC ports, so Adam got to play one that had almost flown completely under the radar, but he like deliberately wrote this up so that it wouldn't. He wrote up about the Final Fantasy Legend Game Boy games that got ported to PC and Switch. Adam, tell me about these games, because if you did not write about these, I would have completely forgot about these ports.
What's the last Game Boy game you remember getting ported?
None.
Yeah, so I just basically wrote this up to like show appreciation literally to Square Enix in this regard, where it's like, hey, these games are literally more than 30 years old now. The only way to play them before this release, well, I should step back a bit.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let's
actually
make
released on
clear.
Switch last year. We're talking about the Final Fantasy Legend Game Boy games, which are 1, 2, and 3. They are known in Japan as SaGa 1, 2, and 3. It's the first 3 games in the SaGa series. I was actually reading some other reviews for these, and someone kind of put it this way, where like after working on Final Fantasy II, Square Enix took Kawazu and the other madmen who worked on it, put them in the corner, had them wear their funny hats, and then they put out the SaGa games. Anyways,
never stopped.
Yeah, they're
more on that later.
So this collection came out for Switch in December of 2020. At the time, we didn't cover it just because Decembers are always busy months for us, and it was, just fell under the radar, just didn't get around to it. But it released for Steam this year, as well as mobile devices. And I just kind of wanted to like show appreciation to like, thank you, Square Enix. You didn't have to do this. You really didn't. But for just porting these games, putting them on PC, where presumably they'll be there for the foreseeable future. Anyone can play them on any computer. They're obviously Game Boy games, so it's not, you can play probably late on anything. And I just appreciate that option rather than, games that end up on subscription services or you don't see these much anymore, but like those novelty mini consoles or whatever, just like here they are on PC. It's pretty much just a straight port. It does have a speed up mode, which I of course very appreciate, which honestly is probably like the only thing it really needed. It's a Game Boy game. So yeah.
Can my 3000 series card run Final Fantasy Legend? I mean, we just talked about how Legend of Mana, it might not work so well. No, but it is cool that we always get a chance to kind of cover some classic games up on the site, and especially kind of respecting the effort that Square Enix put into making those more readily available.
By the way, the only other Game Boy game I can think of that got ported was the first Final Fantasy, or the first Mana game in Final Fantasy Adventure in Collection of Mana, which it'd be nice if that also went to Steam because it's on Switch. But I think there is something like Nintendo actually helped out with the porting process for that because of weird coding and whatnot. So maybe it's stuck on Switch. But the only other Game Boy game I could think of was basically the Final Fantasy SaGa or Final Fantasy Adventure game compared to the Final Fantasy Legend games, which are of course Mana and SaGa respectively.
Every time we talk about classic Mana and SaGa, I feel like I need like a flow chart. I think I got it.
Yeah,
but it just needs a bit of repetition before it like really.
Because it's called actually like it's called Mystic Quest in Europe, but that's different than Final Fantasy Mystic Quest, which in Japan is known as Final Fantasy USA, which it's just really weird.
And then one non-review or impressions feature that did go up in December was an interview about one of the games that featured prominently in our end of the year discussions, Neo: The World Ends With You. So Adam and Cullen were able to get a question and answer interview with the developers behind Neo: The World Ends With You. I don't know much of the details about specifically who you spoke to here and what you were able to get. So Adam, just while you're on a roll, what were you able to glean from your interaction here for this interview about Neo?
So it seems like in terms of who we were able to speak to, it seems like Square Enix basically actually like doled out the questions to whoever was most relevant. So we got some answers from the Japanese side. We got some answers from the localization team, the English localization team, and we kind of got a wide breadth of responses. Like for example, the localization team was talking about like compared to 10 years ago, people are a little bit more online. What does that mean in terms of how people talk? In The World Ends With You or Neo: The World Ends With You, people are texting a lot more often. So like, how do they talk in text versus how do they talk in real, with their words? How do they incorporate slang? Like, there's Japanese slang, there's American slang or English slang. Obviously, it's an English translation. How do you do that? In terms of the like the Japanese side, one of the things we asked about that we didn't get a lot of information on, but it sort of matches what I sort of was speculating about the game in terms of content that I asked. Is there anything that they wanted to put into the game that they weren't able to or couldn't for whatever one reason or another? And one thing they said was the game has a lot of sorry, I'm kind of stumbling over my words here. There's a lot. Shinjuku is a very important place in the game, and they are hoping to maybe have a little bit more about like what happened with Shinjuku. And because if you actually played the game, it kind of feels like the Shinjuku stuff kind of happened off screen, right? With Tsugumi and some of the other characters from there. And they're saying like that was maybe an original intent was to focus more on that, but they sort of decided away from that and into Shibuya to focus more on Rindo and his group. So like we didn't get a lot there, but there's like, it's a little bit more to speculate on in terms of the development of this game and maybe concepts that were there that weren't in the present, not in the full release and things like that. So yeah, that's just kind of a breadth of answers that were interesting to read.
No, it was cool because I do also wanted to shout out that Cullen Black, another contributor, did contribute to that feature. So that's up on the site. And then Neo: The World Ends With You did end up placing highly on our end of the year lists, and it did also win the our commendation for best music of 2021. So a game I will have to make time for.
Let's wait for the Steam port.
Yeah, eventually. The last three features that went up at the end of the year or early this year is that Josh, James, and myself wrote up our personal top 10 lists for the year. And I think all of us have done that multiple times before, maybe not every year, but pretty regularly. So you can kind of look through that to see some non-RPGs that the three of us have played. Well, maybe in Josh and James's case, I look at mine and there really isn't a non-RPG. I felt kind of bad. But you can kind of look at those lists and see they kind of go behind the scenes of the stuff that we've enjoyed that we don't talk about as much on this podcast or in our site coverage, and also kind of see what we thought highly of and how that might have influenced our site's results. So those three features for Brian, Josh, and James, our individual top 10s, are also features up on the site. All right. So now we're going to go through all of the news, absolutely all of it that was discussed between like December 13th and today. So there's a lot. There really is no major order to this. We're not going to go chronologically, and some of these we'll just kind of skip past in the interest of time. Some of these we'll dive into if they seem like something that we're really interested in. Just kind of a very casual and loose kind of look through all the stuff that is usually stuff to either look forward to this year or some updates, such as like some sales milestones that some of the games we've talked about over the course of the last 12 months were able to reach. This is one that we talked about in one of our most anticipated list, and that is Granblue Fantasy Relink. So in early December at Granblue Fantasy Fest 2021, we got a new trailer, and as well as the announcement that it is set to release worldwide in 2022 for PlayStation 5, PlayStation 4, and Steam. So a long time coming. Josh, how do you feel about this? I don't know, like if you've been maintaining your excitement for this game, or if it's waned in the last couple of years, or what are you?
It's one of those things that's like it's kind of been a roller coaster. Like all the gameplay footage that they've been released, like when Platinum Games was working on this, like it looked somewhat more interesting to me. And then like not the most recent footage, but like the footage before that, the release, I was like, I don't know, this game is looking still pretty rough. And then the newest released footage is like, well, no, maybe. I'm still kind of like iffy on like whether like I'm bought in or not at the moment. I guess it really depends. Like it's one of those things I won't know until I get my hands on the controller and play this game for myself. I'm glad it gets a PC version. I knew there were like amusing about that like back in 2018, 2019 about maybe it getting one. But I just want, more info about this game as it, hopefully it won't get like, hopefully it doesn't release like December 31st, 2022. It's technically 2022. It's like, God damn it.
Well, isn't there like that semi-meme image where it says like coming 2018 or something like that?
Yeah. Yeah, so they said we'll hear more about this game after the Granblue anniversary, which is I believe February or March. What
It's
what is it?
March.
March. Okay. So after March, we'll hear more about this game. They showed off. They went over the characters that they've already revealed to be playable. Obviously, Gran and Jita, the male and female protagonists. You choose one as your main character: Catalina, Rackham, Io, Eugen, Rosetta, and then the four Dragon Knights of Lancelot, Vayne, Percival, and Siegfried. And then they newly revealed that Charlotta and Yodarha, or people call him Yoda, um, as playable in the game, and that's cool because like I don't think many people expected Yoda to be playable. So I'm hoping when they announce more people to be playable, obviously Granblue has like a fucking massive fucking roster of like 10 billion characters, but the announced ones that that appeal to me, like I don't know who that would be, but um, yeah, I guess I want to see. There's a girl named Nier. She seems cool. Is she cool, Chow?
Uh, she's a psychopath. How's that? I'll tell you that. Well, okay, no, she's a victim, I guess.
Oh, okay.
I'll tell you. Okay, Josh? The
Huh?
best comparison would be Sakura from Fate. How does that tell you? They have the same voice actress. They
Uh-huh.
also have a similar tragic storyline, and
Okay.
just think about the Heaven's Feel arc and just use that as a comparison. What do
Oh,
you?
I don't really like Sakura from Fate, so fuck. Maybe it's dead on arrival. But I don't know. I was like, oh, she seems cool. But yeah, I have no idea what to expect. I just hope the final playable roster is like interesting because at the moment, like when I look at like the current roster of characters, like there's like maybe only two that images. It's like Yoda and like I don't know, Catalina. That's the only ones that are like, those are maybe cool. Maybe Lancelot also, but
I don't know if we mentioned this, but one thing I appreciated from this Granblue like information is they clarified like the structure of the game.
right.
Because when they showed it in the past, I was a little bit confused. Like, what is this game like? Because it seems like it's sort of a cooperative mission-based game where you can play like a mission with either up to 3 friends or 3 AI or a mix. Because it's like a 4-person like mission-based kind of quest game. And like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And yes, that is actually indeed in the game. Like this I forget what they call it. Let me pull up the article here. But there's one thing that they clarified is there is like a single player story mode as well, and that's basically the two different modes to the game is this sort of story mode and this quest mode. Let me see what they called it here. Oh yeah, they literally call it main story and questing. So like I appreciate they basically literally just spelled it out. Like there's the single player main story, and then there's this kind of side mode quest mode that is can be multiplayer.
Right. So I'm glad that was all just clarified. And yeah, that's all we really know aside the big thing is like sharing the narrative structure and the new playable characters and that it's coming to PC via Steam. Like that's all the new info and obviously the targeted release date of 2022 and that there's a new character named Roland that's never been in Granblue before. Um but yeah, I mean I guess I'm looking forward to it. I'm really interested to see how it shapes up and yeah, that's all I can really go off of until they share more info and hopefully I'm hoping the release date is like somewhat summer, like that's around
I
summer.
wonder. I wonder if they learned things from the Versus launch. I think
So
like
this is the interesting thing that I was musing about too when they were like sharing details about that game, and it seems like at the official site they're not partnering up with like an external Western publisher for this release. It seems like they're doing the release themselves, from what I understand.
I'm not sure who's burning the bridges. Like Xseed was it's like they didn't get the game ahead of time. These guys got it out, and there's just all this like drama about it's like who botched the launch and stuff.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'll recap this really fast because we're probably losing a lot of listeners on this. The release of Granblue Fantasy Versus is pretty infamous in their history for Cygames because of how that was handled, and that was like in 2020. The release dates for Granblue Versus were on Japanese PS4 is February 6th, North America PS4 March 3rd, Steam was March 13th, Europe was March 27th. And the fun fact about that was the EU publisher, Marvelous, and I don't think the NA publisher XC, they're both one and the same anyway, knew that the Steam version existed, if I remember correctly. And then because like the Steam version was released, like was revealed very like late, like last minute, and like Marvelous and XC didn't do the localization for the games. All they did was the English voice acting, and they were just publishing partner duties. All that was done in house at SaGames. And the Hong Kong release of Granblue Versus that launched alongside Japanese release date and had the full English localization text on it. So if you connect the dots, a lot of the North America and especially European sales were already cannibalized by SaGames' decisions. So, and of course, a lot of people blame Marvelous and Xseed, even though it was probably a situation they couldn't control and it was out of their hands because SaGames went off to go do their thing. So, I mean, at least with Relink, they're starting to take steps to like avoid that. One, by announcing the Steam version way in advance before release, not last minute. And two, it doesn't seem like there's like any external publishing partners, so they don't screw them over again, perhaps. So that's we'll see. We'll see. I think it won't. They won't botch it because it's all on them now.
We also got two kind of announcements back to back that we could have touched on earlier when we were talking about Trails from Zero and Trails to Azure and basically that series in general. We've obviously talked about on the podcast in the previous year about the most recent release, Kuro no Kiseki, which James has played through and written his impressions on up on the site. During a shareholders meeting in December, Falcom did announce that Kuro no Kiseki, surprise, will be getting a sequel coming out in fall 2022 in Japan, Kuro no Kiseki 2, Crimson Sin. So if you were expecting a Yeast 9 follow-up or Brandish or whatever you hipsters are looking forward to from Falcom, no, it's more Kiseki for 2022. And then obviously, we've got Hajimari or Trails from into Reverie slated coming up not in 2022 but 2023 for the English releases. So we're back to kind of the state where we are perpetually 3 or so years behind. There was a question and answer during this shareholder meeting about the lag between the Japanese and English releases for these games. I'm trying to figure out who gave this answer. The answer that Falcom gave was that there are a number of internal circumstances with the NIS America, the English publisher, that are outside of Falcom's control, but they are interested in increasing the release pace for the English localizations. But they are interested in working with NISA to improve the situation going forward, though as far as I can tell, they don't really provide many details on how they accomplish this.
There's like that's such a stupidest answer from them, to be honest. Like, I wonder if there's like a way for us to like solve this problem, and then you're thinking about like how Falcom puts these out fucking yearly at a machine's pace with a shitload of text, and then you're thinking, I wonder how we can fucking speed up the process of this. Like, surely we cannot be the problem, right?
Yeah, not to mention, like, you know it as well as I do, Josh. Like, Kuro released unfinished. Like a month later, they actually finished the game. It's like,
it's like now they're like releasing in a state where like they have to like patch in fucking cutscenes and refining like the actual like battle animations because they were unfinished for the initial release because they had to make that.
Not to mention doubling the frame rate and making it so you can skip best craft animations.
It's like, Jesus fucking Christ, dude. It's like, and then they're thinking like, I wonder if there is a way for us to improve the pace of us to release them. It's like, bro, come on.
I don't know. I'm not really positive about the Trail series, considering what I read from that interview recently that they have. It's like even the logo is apparently not finished for the sequel. It's like, oh my god! It's like, do they have to really put everything out in a yearly basis? It's like
I think it's one of those things. Yeah, I think it's one of those things like they put themselves in a weird financial corner where it's like sink or swim at this point. Like if we're not making this amount of guaranteed profit or income like in a year, then like we're in trouble. I think that's where they are right now.
And even Kuro didn't sell that well. Apparently, that's what I heard. It's like it's not even like meeting half the sales of the Cold Steel series or something like that.
And that's why they've had to like expand to like other like partnerships and stuff. Like with the Cold Steel anime, they had to license that out and like get a little bit of income from it. So I mean, it's It's
It
a
feels
stupid
weird.
answer. It's a
Yeah.
stupid answer, but I don't know if there's there's actually a solution for this at the moment with their circumstances as well, which sucks, Like,
Yeah.
but they've that's always been Falcom. They've always been small and they've always they've now cornered themselves in this weird financial hole where like if it's not Kiseki, then we're not fucking selling. Like East, I don't know how well East does these days either compared to Kiseki in Japan. I don't think it does as well.
I want to say one thing though. It's very weird that they're saying, "Oh, well, the logo isn't even fully finalized." And it's like you look at it, it's like, why'd they even say that? Because it looks perfectly fine. It looks finished. Like, why on earth would you say that? It just makes people worry for probably no reason. Makes no sense.
Yeah, even then, like they showed off the artwork for like Elaine's new outfit in the Kuro sequel, and they're like, it's not final, by the way. It's just like it's kind of like concept art. It's like, wait, what? Oh, this is so weird. It's so weird, and you know that Kuro's gonna make that September 27th release date come hell or high water, whether the game's actually finished or not, because that's just their favorite release date for Tales games or Trails games. I don't know.
And we'll look forward to it in 2026. Unless something
I'd like to be honest. Like, I'm really excited to see Kuro to Kiseki too. Crimson. That's it. It is. I'm really just see where they take these characters and the story next. There's obviously, the main plot line is obviously like unresolved, like from the first one. Like it's pretty conclusive, but like there's still one lingering thing that they have to do. So I would just see where it goes, and I like there was a Famitsu interview that they did talking about like how the characters have been where they're at in popularity with the Japanese audience. That's somewhat relevant and important to the Trails series because for better or worse, like fan reception somewhat guides them at times throughout the series. So it was really cool to see that like it took a while, but like Elaine like is pretty popular among women and like a good number of players as they gone through the game now. So she like out of the gate, Elaine had like really like bad negative reception for whatever reason, but I'm glad that Elaine is now.
I love how you say she had bad negative reception for whatever reason when we both know the reason why.
Oh yeah, we know the reason why, but I'm not going to share it here. But yeah, and I wonder if they're gonna what do you call this? I hopefully they won't pull what was that character trait from Zisteria with the spear that was marketed as the heroine at first? What was her name?
Alicia.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't like. I'm not gonna compare to Elaine and Alicia in that way, but it does borderline get there at times with Kuro, but it wasn't marketed that way. So this one, it seems like they're putting Elaine front and center. So that means she. I hope she's a fully playable now as part of your party.
Yeah.
We got a new trailer for a game that I had no idea existed and wasn't expecting and did not know what to expect other than basically Josh sharing it and saying like, what the hell is this? So I am talking about Showa American Story from Necom Entertainment. So this is a 3-minute trailer, a reveal trailer for the game that takes place in a post-apocalyptic America and an alternate timeline as if it has been overtaken by Showa era Japan, as if they had colonized America like in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And this trailer is a trip, just everything about it. So
yeah,
I went into this trailer basically only knowing that it was wild, and I'm like, all right, people are just playing this up because people like to exaggerate on the internet. But this trailer, I was just like, what in the world? So it's an action RPG / like zombie horde sort of game that plays both as like action combat, but also third person shooter, but also bullet hell with like driving mechanics and maybe some crafting. I forget, might have been shown in there. And it got a really interesting vibe. It's got some like, I don't know. I'm trying to figure out. Yeah.
That's literally how they describe it.
Apparently there's like, it's got like some deliberate references to things like Kill Bill and things like that, which honestly are lost on me because I haven't seen those movies.
There are some devious references and deep cuts in there. It's like, oh my god, they put this in here.
There was a VHS tape with growing pains, like the
What is that
TV show.
referencing? Oh,
Like when did that show release? Like it's like an 80s, 90s show. Let's see.
Chow, you'll get this reference because we're both brain damaged. Where
90s.
like they showed the infamous Japanese pool scene that like in that white room, the Japanese pool that people make a fucking reference of because it's like a popular spot for JAVs, and like that environment is in that game in that trailer. I'm like, what? I'm like, okay, that's a choice. Yep.
I'm watching this trailer. Like I'm just watching it now because now you like mentioned this thing. I'm just like watching it. I'm actually totally hyped for this game. It has like all the things that has all the things I was craving for. You know, like me and my best friend growing up as kids. Like this is like hitting all that nostalgia. You know, for those things that we make fun of.
And so the thing about this, and I didn't realize it after the trailer. I was talking about it with some friends. It's like the music in this trailer is not actually like a Showa era song. It's just a popular song in China.
Yes, that song is a Chinese song.
Yeah.
So this is a Chinese developer making a game set in America after it had been like economically bought out by Japan. So like what a weird like mixture you end up there. So this is the first paragraph of the basically the press release that accompanied this reveal trailer. Showa 66, Japan has bought out most of the United States with its strong economic power. A surge of immigration has firmly planted Japanese culture within the American continent. The two cultures are rapidly amalgamated. Although conflicts are inevitable, citizens gradually adapt to a new life never imagined as time goes by. And like, I want to keep reading because that doesn't explain anything about like the zombies and the post-apocalyptic stuff. Like, how did that? Or I guess I'll just keep going. However, a mysterious catastrophic incident changes the world drastically. The social order is long gone. An unknown amount of time has passed. A teenage girl mysteriously revives from the dead, only to find a brand new wild post-apocalyptic world with zombies, monsters, and human survivors. So the game, honestly, like as it doesn't look like it plays very well. It looks really janky, and it's got some really wacky stuff in it. But it kind of falls in like the same thing as like that Stranger of Paradise stuff, where it's like I still kind of want to play it despite all that. And there's no other game that I can really figure out how to compare this to.
Like,
and
if you wanted your first impression to like be a bang and like get eyes on it, this is probably a good way to do it, for better or worse. You know, for better or worse, it's like, all right, sure. So yeah, I'm strangely looking forward to it. Just like I'm so curious now.
So this game has no set release timetable. It is got listed platforms of PlayStation 4 and 5 and PC, but not guaranteed for this year or any year. Nothing other than this initial 3-minute trailer. So it looks honestly very stupid, but in the good type, in the good way.
Yeah, I recommend everyone to like fucking watch that trailer.
At least enjoy the trailer. You don't have to play the game; just enjoy the trailer. It'll take 3 minutes.
Yeah. And it's like, what?
A couple other small announcements to round out the year. We did get during CES the announcement of the PlayStation VR 2, which I'm not a big VR enthusiast, but I know they revealed a ton of details there about the capabilities, and people have been comparing it to like the Rift 2 and the Valve Index and how it has like a better resolution than those, but it has how it stacks up, and it seems like it stacks up very favorably. One of the announcements alongside the PSVR 2 announcement was a new VR experience for the Horizon series to kind of dovetail off of Horizon Forbidden West. This is Horizon Call of the Mountain. Now, honestly, they didn't hardly show anything. They showed like 8 seconds of footage. And obviously showing footage of a VR game in a trailer is difficult. It just looks like first-person Horizon. You don't play as Aloy, but you will meet her. That's basically all that we know. So I don't know if anyone's super excited for this, but I'm also not a big VR buff, so maybe I'm not the person to talk about it much.
I'm actually now interested in getting this PSVR 2 because of its you're no longer bound by the PlayStation Move controller tracking, for example. It's all headset-based controller tracking, and that the fact that it's a single cord setup now with this.
Yeah, single USB, right?
Yeah.
Legit, the only reason I don't use my PSVR more often is the whole setup is just
Yep.
a pain in the ass.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to see like the capability. Like this might be the time for me to get into VR now. That like if it's just a single cord and you just plug into your PS5 and that's it, like hell yeah, you know.
Yeah, why
So
not at
the
that point?
specs, the one thing to consider is it's definitely going to be at least like $400-$500.
Yeah, it's gonna be fucking expensive, but but even the PSVR is still highly regarded as like one of the better like entry level experiences in that VR space. So
What
hopefully,
happened to what happened to your PC? Is the best choice still the Oculus kind of thing, or I'm just
The
curious.
best choice for PC has always been either the HTC Vive or the Valve Index.
Huh.
yeah. Unfortunately,
They have
the thing you're
proper,
missing is that there are some like Quest 2 like or Quest exclusive games like Resident Evil 4. Like that's the big thing about that. I don't think there's a way to like kind of get access to the Quest exclusive games with the other
Yeah.
VR devices.
Well, I would just buy a VR headset because I want to play Resident Evil Village with it or something like that. That's what I'm
Because
thinking.
there's mods for them now, yeah.
Like I wouldn't care about the
Wait, does Village have VR support or was that modded in?
no.
They're
but-
modding in VR support to the RE Engine games on PC.
Wait, like say like Monster Hunter for example, like would that be possible?
Well, I mean, it's RE Engine, so if somebody wanted to do it for Rise, they probably
That'd
could.
be fucking crazy if they did. Just like, hey, put it on and throw.
Just like, oh man, with the wire bugs and the way
Yep.
that if they mapped like the camera angles to the player's face, oh god, when you do a somersault, just instantly throw up.
But if you're mounting a monster and the way the fucking camera would shake as you're mounting the monster, like I love it. Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know they were modding in VR support for RE Engine games now. I'm really interested to see like how that shapes up. But yeah, like I said, like with this PSVR 2, if it's backwards compatible, like I might be like this might be the time for me to get into VR now, just with just a very simple setup.
Here's something that I'll have to rely on Josh to elucidate on. So we did talk about how DELiGHTWORKS, its game publishing studio, is being bought out by Aniplex and now being under the new name Lasengle. But that's kind of all I know. So
Yes,
Josh,
this
help
is
me
a
here,
weird
Carrie.
thing. Yes, Yoshinori Ono used to be at Capcom. Then he moved over to DELiGHTWORKS last year as the president of DELiGHTWORKS, and the chief operating officer. And like one of the big moves now coming out of that is they're basically they made a whole separate division called Lasengle that will take over the entirety of DELiGHTWORKS' game business, and that obviously includes Fate Grand Order, which is their big one. And Aniplex has always been working alongside, like as a partner, behind like anything, pretty much anything that like is Type Moon related these days, like with the like the Fate movies and the Fate series. Like Aniplex is the one that published those like anime stuff and releases them. Even if it's like UFO Table Studio related, like Kimetsu no Yaiba, Demon Slayer, like they're involved with that studio that produces these things. So Aniplex is like kind of is like a shadow leader over the whole operation, but now it's like formalized that like they'll be the ones directly responsible. It's like no longer just the Lightworks. They're kind of like cutting out the Lightworks out of the picture, and they're kind of just like owning it on that, so under a new name, Lasengle. So it's a really interesting move, and I bet you one of the things that really a catalyst for this move was the big gigantic failure of Sakura Kakame from DELiGHTWORKS last year when that closed down really fucking early, like just to a point where it's like, oh my god, we lost so much fucking money on this thing. It probably made Aniplex step in and like, okay, you're not doing this anymore. You're never gonna make a decision like this ever again. We're gonna take over. So I don't know what that entails for like the future of like the Fate Grand Order mobile game and the future would be the DELiGHTWORKS future projects, because they don't really have other than Fate Grand Order, like the DELiGHTWORKS has like no other like game. They do some board game stuff. But yeah, they do nothing else besides FGO these days. So
Hey, they added pity in FGO. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I mean, it's always had pity. You only had to have like several.
No, but
thousand
now you
dollars.
got actual pity
But
from
the pity, like the way they implement it is so fucking stupid too. So it's like they added pity, and then the way they added it was like it's like basically spitting on your face, like So okay, I mean, I guess they did, but it's so stupid. So either way, like I wonder how this will affect FGO going forward because it's still pretty successful in Japan, even though like 2021 was one of their weakest years. Um, but it still makes a shit ton of money. Just because you had a weak year doesn't mean you stop making a lot of money. It's still making tons of money. It does make you question though. Like all it takes is for like Aniplex now to be like, we're not really making much profit in these regions where FGO is operating. They could easily that makes it more like likely that like if Aniplex decides, hey, this is not doing well, they have less barriers to go through to be like, let's just shut it down in that region. Potentially, that there's all just potential scenarios because obviously they're still making money out of those regions, but nothing makes as much money as like the Japanese release of FGO. Japan pours a lot of money into it. So yeah, I mean, best of luck. As for the other not FGO stuff for the DELiGHTWORKS, I mean, Melty Blood is still ongoing. It'll have its 2 new DLC characters for free coming soon, and there's still a lot of projects that I'm sure they want to pursue.
In late 2020, we were promised that we were going to get a lot of news, or maybe not a lot necessarily, but more news about Final Fantasy XVI. We even listed it as basically a wishful thinking release for 2021. Of course, that never happened. In 2021, we did get like one small news about halfway through the year about facial capture and voice recording. But that was pretty much it, and it was always kind of like, well, we were told we were going to get more before the end of the year. There's not much time left. Well, December basically almost closed out, and kind of unsurprisingly, we learned that was going to get delayed, and that the game itself had experienced some production troubles stemming from, of course, the pandemic, the ongoing COVID-19 situation. So we got a letter in late December from the producer, Naoki Yoshida, basically apologizing that there wasn't going to be any more information on Final Fantasy XVI in 2021. The pandemic had delayed the game's development by about a half year. Though, obviously to stay tuned because we are expecting more information in spring of this year of 2022. So kind of not surprising. And I think Yoshida, obviously, by helming Final Fantasy XIV and Walker and Shadowbringers, and has had built up so much, respect and admiration that people are. I saw no response to this letter that wasn't anything other than absolutely like 100% fully understanding about, we've all had to deal with the pandemic ourselves in our own ways, and Final Fantasy 16 information comes second to like the health and well-being of their employees and working through the pandemic and making sure that what they're going to present to us at some point this year hopefully lives up to the expectations of the fans and the quality level that they want to reach. So we got that information in late December. We don't know specifically when we're going to hear more about Final Fantasy 16, but they are slated or expecting something in spring.
Yeah, God bless Yoshi-P, dude. He's like one of the most transparent people out there. That like, if anything's going on with the games that he's helming, like he's very transparent with the fan base and the user base. Like, hey, here's what's going on. We're really sorry, but he's like not afraid to like go into specifics, and I'm glad that like he's allowed to, because I imagine a lot of people in Square Enix would like to have that privilege, and a lot of Square Enix members probably don't want to have that. While Yoshida's probably built enough like goodwill and reputation, and to just like be free about that and be real with people and be like, hey, this is tough. Like game development is fucking hard right now, more so than ever before. So go for it.
Sorry. Not to mention that he's also on the board of directors, so that probably helps.
Yeah, I forgot about this. He's at the board of directors too. So I'm I'm really really glad that the way he delivered this message was just it wasn't like a very vague like ongoing circumstances are like delaying it. It's like it wasn't like a 1 or 2 sentence or like even just a paragraph thing. It was like, hey, here's a letter and here's kind of step by step what's going on, and it's been really hard.
And it wasn't the only letter that we got to bring in the new year from a Square Enix executive. So we also got a letter from the president of Square Enix wishing us a happy 2022, Yusuke Matsuda, about the upcoming, admiration or aspirations for Square Enix for the new year. So how do I even broach this subject? So here are the first sentence and a half of the New Year's letter from the president of Square Enix. I would like to begin by wishing everyone a happy new year. The metaverse was a hot topic in 2021, and it just goes on from there. So this letter has obviously already made the rounds. I'm not going to be too coy about it. The whole letter is about, NFTs and, blockchain technology and how Square Enix is looking deeply, deeply into these on how to incorporate these into their products, how to kind of phase out people who play to have fun versus people who play to contribute, both terms used in the letter.
Oh, God.
And,
I still laugh at it. It still makes me laugh. I've read this like at least 10 times, and it still
We
makes me
understand that there are people that prefer to play the game just for fun. However,
that,
Age is
however,
over.
is carrying like an Atlas level of just weight
Oh,
on it.
gee.
Man,
So obviously,
I've
this
never
letter
seen
has
such a tone deaf message.
it's been lambasted completely, and even by like trying to play devil's advocate, it's hard because it sounds like the plurality of this letter is basically about like how to help passion. I'm trying to play like so devil's advocate here and thread this needle. How to help passionate like hobbyists, give them incentive to contribute to effectively like modding these games to give them like life beyond their initial release with explicit incentives. And this way, using this blockchain technology will help motivate them. But this is all done under the preface of like those people who play to have fun, like whatever. Like, yeah, they'll understand
Also-
eventually.
also, I can only speak for myself, but as someone that does have friends that are game devs that have talked about this at length, no, like that's a trap that people fall into, but absolutely nobody has given an actual like workable use case for NFTs in gaming. Like nothing that they say, oh, decentralization. It's like, no, that would require every single developer to basically decide, okay, we're all going to make like 3D, we're going to use the same 3D models and stuff for certain NFTs or whatever to be used in all of our games. And that's not going to fucking happen. It just
Yeah.
won't.
Fellas,
Yeah,
imagine podcasting with people who play to have fun. Can't be me.
Oh, Jesus, can't enjoy something for fun if you can't have a monetary incentive out the back end. You got to monetize our hobbies.
Oh, come on. What are you doing?
If you want me to hold back, honestly, and this is me holding back, the most like the kindest response I can have to that letter is at least they didn't announce actual NFTs.
Right.
I mean, they already have NFTs. They have Million Arthur.
Yeah, that's their NFT game.
Yeah,
I don't know
I
what-
love how they call that NFTs, and it's like it just shows how half-assed the entire idea is because that's not NFTs.
I mean, they're doing NFTs for like the series. Like I think it's like virtual
Yeah.
cards or some card thing. Like I don't really keep up with it, but I know Million Arthur is like
Yeah.
has been their experiment for like the past year, maybe year and a half with it, and I guess it's been doing well enough for the president to be like, all right, time to get into the metaverse. Like
I just hate how it's dragging Yoshi P's good name with their company with his message. It's like everyone.
It's so weird, right? Because like there are some companies now that like they're still gonna dabble with it, but then they're like, well, if it doesn't do well, we'll get out of it. Like SaGa, for example, just recently said, well, we're gonna dabble with it, but if like the response is bad to it, then I guess we'll pull out, but only if the response is bad. Like, oh
Of course
man.
it's gonna be bad, but I don't know. Maybe it's a Japan thing. Japan seems to be more receptive of it.
But yeah, that's what it is. It's like the how NFTs are perceived in like Japan versus like us in the West is like it's relatively more neutral or positive, depending on the messaging over there and how that's delivered, and it's generally more seen as like an okay thing, for better
Yeah.
or worse. Which is,
And
it's gonna be a tough thing to break, because that now that sentiment is now obviously bleeds into like investors of those, like, not even just game companies, just companies in general in Japan. So investors are going to be like, "What's your answer to NFTs? Do you have a plan for NFTs?" And of course, you have to answer to the investors. So of course, you're going to be like, "Yes, we do. We're starting to have initiatives looking into it." And I'm sure for some of these companies, or some of the people in these companies, are like hoping the way to cleanly get out of that for them in relation to investors is experiment with it, but like hopefully it fails in a way that they can say to investors, "Hey, we dabbled into it, and these are the results. The results are not good. We're gonna pull out." That's the way to like probably get out of it now cleanly with investors these days.
I can't let this letter go without reading like this section about user generated content. And it's like traditional gaming has offered no explicit incentive for this latter group of people who play to contribute, who were motivated strictly by inconsistent personal feelings such as goodwill and volunteer spirit. And then user generated content has been brought into being solely because of individuals' desire for self-expression, and not because of explicit incentive existed to reward them for their creative efforts, i.e. monetary compensation. It's like, I don't know. It just feels kind of gross that it's like, how dare, like these hobbyists, how they're producing this stuff, and out of goodwill, out of passion, and it's
How
just
dare they?
There's no room for passion in capitalism.
I'm gonna turn a net trail guy into an NFT, guys. Support me, guys.
You're gonna turn into a monkey then?
No, I said I'll
NFT.
turn it into NFT.
Okay.
Next trails guy will be NFT. It's like you buy a page of a token to get the full guide.
On my way.
Just remember, though, they won't actually own the guide. They'll just own a receipt saying that they own the guide or that
Yeah.
page.
Yeah. So the feedback to this, at least from my perspective, has been really negative, though I don't think Square Enix has given any sort of, well, SaGa has sort of said, like, we'll take a slow approach, we'll wait and see. I don't think I've seen anything from Square Enix, like, doubling, like, not in either direction, either doubling down or pulling back. It's just, this letter is just kind of where it stands as of right now.
Yeah.
Haven't Ubisoft already done this? They already done it and it failed miserably in their face.
They're doing their Quartz thing with Ghost Recon, and I've seen reports saying that it's basically like not making money, or like the transactions are within a very small population of people, and it's been incubating for like 3 years. Like they've been like, there's a lot of resources behind it, and it hasn't paid off. But I've only seen that from the fringes, because I'll be honest, I don't care about Ghost Recon.
Exactly. Hopefully, it just doesn't work out for them. Whatever their efforts are going to be. Hopefully, that doesn't like bleed into like big headliner projects like FF16
or 14.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Just NFTs and 14. Oh my god.
The moment they do that, Ion sub and never look back.
Holy shit! I didn't even think about that. Oh my god. That'd be.
But most people say there's nothing to worry. The game is too spaghetti code to put something like this in.
Oh, good. Thank goodness.
Oh, great. So yeah, I mean, we won't really see this pan out until, like, I'm sure later to the year, if not into next year, depending on how they decide to implement stuff. Hopefully, not into anything we care about, or not at all. But, yeah. I'm sure people are hoping they can just like bully them out of it, like how they did with the Stalker devs, essentially. Which, God bless.
We did get another letter from a studio head. This is from BioWare studio manager Gary McKay, I believe. Yeah, Gary McKay, and about BioWare, the state of BioWare, and looking ahead. And this letter has honestly a lot less interesting. Interesting, one way to describe the previous letter. There's a lot less to chew on here from the BioWare letter. It opens up with some, typical talk about how it's been a challenge the last couple of years, about the pandemic, not only the pandemic, but how their Austin studio was affected by the snowpocalypse last winter in Texas. And then they talk about basically what to expect for this year. The interesting thing is that out of all, there are no real announcements in this letter. I mean, and I don't think you should have expected one. But the first game that BioWare brings up in this letter is a new expansion to the Old Republic, which I'm not saying is good or bad. It's just interesting. Like, oh, like that's still like a priority for them. And it's the first game that they bring up here. So Star Wars: The Old Republic: Legacy of the Sith is releasing on February 15th. They're talking about how they're excited for that release. And then the two ones that we're most interested in about them being hard at work on Dragon Age and Mass Effect. The only thing that they have here is a sentence saying, for Dragon Age, we have a veteran group of talented developers working on the next iteration of the franchise. We are focused on a single player experience that is built on choices that matter. So I guess it's kind of anyone that was worried that it was going to be like anthemized or multiplayer or something. Seems like no, they are doubling down on a single player game, which I believe they've said before, but it feels like the Dragon Age 4 news has been so drip feed since like 2018 that there's really no meat on the bone there to chew from. As for Mass Effect, they just say like, remember that poster we released on November 7th as part of N7 Day? Well, there's some Easter eggs in it, so take a look at it again. And I think Andrea wrote a feature on the site about kind of digging into that poster and what we might be able to glean from it. So we've already done our due diligence there. But Mass Effect and Dragon Age still hard at work. That's basically what we get for BioWare. Other than that, they are, the letter's pretty boilerplate.
Tangentially related, that I didn't put on the doc, but since it is EA related, there have been recent rumors that we might be hearing soon of like a Jedi Fallen Order 2.
Oh, right.
Yeah, so that info came from Jeff Grubb. Yeah, and we'll see where that if that ends up being true or not. But that was literally the game that made EA go, man, maybe single player games are good.
Yeah, man, maybe this isn't a bad idea.
Well, hopefully, it's they strike gold again with it, and it turns out well for that game, that sequel.
We also got a very, very, very short letter from the ESA, the group behind E3, which has been obviously canceled 2 years ago and digital only last year. The letter reads as follows. Due to the ongoing health risks surrounding COVID-19 and its potential impact on the safety of exhibitors and attendees, E3 will not be held in person in 2022. We remain incredibly excited about the future of E3 and look forward to announcing more details soon. So no E3 again this year no in-person E3 again this year for 3 years in a row. Some people have reported on this as saying like E3 2022 will be digital again, but that's not, as far as I can tell, explicitly stated. People are just kind of gleaning when they said will not be held in person in 2022. I think like we've talked about E3 a few times on this podcast and how as a networking event it can't be beat, even if like the functional like utility of the event has diminished even before the pandemic situation. So we will obviously miss the chance to meet up and network in that sense.
Yeah, that was the like really that's the real value about E3. It's like there's no other event or like thing like at any part of the year for like as big as E3 for the whole entire games industry just be at one spot. There is some like events in Europe that do have that, but they don't like for my outsiders eyes, like it feels like E3 is the one that really garnished that more fully.
So they did hold the digital E3 last year, and I remember signing up for it, and then I never looked at it again. It was pointless. So I have no idea if they're going to do that again this year, but I won't do it if they do. Just whatever Jeff Keighley puts together for Summer of Gaming or whatever all the other State of Plays or Nintendo Directs or publisher related streams that they put up in June time period we'll cover as we always do, but no E3 this year. But I feel like the longer that's the case, the less people miss it. But
remembering now that like your experience last year, the digital E3, they had like this whole like back end structure interface where like you can like set up an avatar and like try to interact with people there.
I literally logged into it once and never again because it was this is like it was pointless. But one thing that several of our contributors have been able to experience is a lot of these like remote preview sessions, sometimes through Discord. And what's the other one that George was able to do with the?
There's a few different softwares out there that are basically like you get to play this game streamed off of our servers onto your computer. There's like Shadow is one, and there's another I can't remember.
Yeah, and it's worked decently well. And like obviously in the era of Stadia, that sounds like a weird thing to say. Like I'm not surprised, but it's like it's just another kind of nail in the coffin that says like, do we need E3 anymore? Yes, the networking aspect is valuable, But when, the software tools have made these, alternative experiences more and more viable, that one of us covering a game here in the United States can do a preview event from a publisher in Europe through a streaming system like Discord or Shadow. There's a lot that we can still accomplish, but, obviously we miss meeting in person, and we always will. So hopefully we'll still have the opportunity to do that at some venue in the future. But, things are still murky as we are in the year of 2020 part 2 or part 3 at this point. So that kind of covers it for like the main topics that were announced in either early January or throughout the month of December after we had our last podcast. Actually, some of these upcoming topics are still also pretty big, so let's just keep going. We'll just keep rolling through these. We talked about the SaGa series and Kawazu at Square Enix earlier in the podcast. We talked obviously about the PC ports of the first 3 games. We talked briefly about SaGa Scarlet Grace being a semi-recent release that we had all the accolades on a few years ago. Kawazu did tease for this year that the SaGa series will be coming back in a big way, or at least starting to. Oh, and I don't want to forget obviously the SaGa Frontier Remastered from last year did win our best re-release for 2021. Akitoshi Kawazu, the manager of the series, has teased that we will be seeing multiple titles in the SaGa series in a new game, a remaster, and a remake. Is it implied all for this year or starting this year?
It was, well, maybe James or somebody, like in terms of the Japanese, but it seemed like it was more just, we are going to be starting on these this year, not necessarily completing them. But I don't know if the Japanese nuance might be more specified than that.
Where was the original quote?
It sounded like, as I look it up here, it sounded like he said basically the confirmation of we are working on a remake, a remaster, and a new game. But I don't know if he's like, they're all coming out this year.
This was a tweet from Kawazu from December 30th. So the translation we've got is he's very much looking forward to the new year, noting that SaGa is in full swing with a remaster, a remake, and a new game.
And this is something he's kind of teased at. So when SaGa Frontier Remaster released last April, they had like a launch live stream. And even then, way back, like almost, 9 months ago or whatever, he said, we are working on a new game. Back then.
So basically what he's saying is that they're continuing work on remaster, remake, and a new title. And he hopes to deliver good news this year. He's going to try his best to deliver good news.
Yeah, so in terms of new title, SaGa Scarlet Grace is the most recent title. It released in 2016 for Vita. And then later we got the port version. It's called Ambitions that released on basically everything else, right? And that's the most recent game, and that was 2019. So we got confirmation that they're making a new game. It hasn't really been announced. It's been pre-announced. In terms of remaster, I feel like a lot of people are expecting SaGa Frontier 2 because they did the first one. They can do the second one. Apparently, the second one is, I've never actually played it, but from what I can tell, it's more like a 2D drawn game, like sprites, rather than models or anything. So it's the type of game I figure probably, and it sounds like it's pretty much feature complete. Chow has played it, I assume, right? So
yeah, I beat it too.
And it sounds like that seems right for a remaster. In terms of remake, the speculation, maybe Romancing Saga 1 again, maybe Unlimited Saga.
No remake. It better be remaster. No touch perfection. I would be really to see how the fuck you would remake Unlimited Saga. I don't know what you do with Unlimited Saga.
If Kawazu fixes Unlimited Saga somehow, he gets some kind of reward from me. I had to praise this man. It's there is nothing you could do to fix this game.
Oh my god!
He's a complimentary guide.
We'll have a special Developer of the Year award go to Kawazu if he does it. The absolute madman.
In a very similar sort of announcement, we also got a Twitter post from the Bravely Default official Twitter page, basically the Twitter page for Team Asano, which is kind of like the overarching studio that partners with others to do the Bravely Default series and Octopath Traveler and the upcoming Triangle Strategy. So they posted a New Year's message on Twitter basically saying that they, outside of even Triangle Strategy, they plan to announce and release multiple titles and projects this year. They are also heading up the announced Dragon Quest III HD 2D remake, as well as some mobile games that are currently out in Japan, like the Octopath Traveler, Champs of the Continent, and the Bravely Default Brilliant Lights. So while there's no information,
Brilliant Lights isn't out yet, but
but it's
games.
only slated for Japan. No announcement for the West.
Yeah.
Right.
So then two announced titles are Triangle Strategy and Dragon Quest III, but it sounds like they are planning to tease multiple titles to be announced and released in 2022. It's very similar to
This is just pure speculation, but like they're obviously releasing Triangle Strategy, right? Like that's coming out. I doubt that's going to be moving. But in terms of like announcing and releasing multiple more, like that seems kind of surprising.
They just
So
mostly had like HD 2D stuff, like remakes.
My assumption is like maybe there's like ports in there, like maybe a Bravely Default 1 port for PC or Switch or something. I don't know. Like something that I'm thinking like smaller scale, or you know, something that allow them to release multiple without like, you know, 'cause that's a lot of dev time if they're all brand new games. Or maybe they're smaller scale. Maybe there have been one thing. This is again pure speculation, but there's rumors of like a Final Fantasy Tactics remake or a Tactics Ogre remake. Like they're already working on Dragon Quest III remake, so it's like maybe
I didn't even think
heading up those as well
from like the Nvidia leaks and how they might be
right. So it's like who knows, but multiple titles to be announced and released. It's like it's surprising. And we still don't know when Dragon Quest III is going to be released. I think we mentioned that earlier. We know it exists, and that's basically it.
Well, yeah. I mean, this is definitely one of the more interesting teams to keep an eye on. They have a lot of cool stuff in the works.
I just want to say I love like the art style they've embraced for Team Asano.
Yeah,
like this sort of chibi art. It's just so cute.
Yeah, it is. Here's something I'll have to lean on Adam for. But we got the announcement of a new final expansion for Assassin's Creed Valhalla. This is Dawn of Ragnarok. And the interesting part about this is we kind of talked about Valhalla actually in a decently positive light when we were talking about ongoing support in the Game of the Year podcast, because it's had decent amount of it, and in a way that's not like fixing issues or like patching up things, actually adding a bunch of new content with Wrath of the Druids and Siege of Paris. But Dawn of Ragnarok is another expansion, and there will also be crossover stories that basically cross-pollinate the characters of Assassin's Creed Valhalla and Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which basically obviously had the popular protagonist Cassandra kind of front and center in this crossover, will be playable in Valhalla's, whatever this DLC ends up looking like. So, Adam, are you excited about this?
So the interesting thing about
coy,
I think the support they've given Assassin's Creed Valhalla is pretty good. I mean, I'd probably like it more if I liked the game itself more. But the interesting thing about this newest expansion, Dawn of Ragnarok, is that it's $40. Like that's like almost like games are priced at $40, not like AAA, but it's not an unreasonable price for a full game, $40. And the other DLCs,
that's how it used to be.
The other DLCs were $20 each. So it's like, I guess this is going to be even more of an expansion than the previous two DLCs. So it's like a pretty meaty add-on that they're putting here. And it's interesting to me because you don't see that all too often these days. You see some of these small DLCs or whatever, but it's like a pretty significant add-on here. And I'll probably play it. It's out of a completionist tendency to play it because I played the rest, so why not?
Have you played Siege of Paris?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize. I knew you did Wrath of the Druids. I didn't know you did Siege of Paris.
How do you feel about the crossover stories, Adam?
I never played Odyssey, so I have no attachment to Cassandra.
So these crossover ones are free DLC, so that you don't have to buy Dawn of Ragnarok to get them. Now, is it just Cassandra and Valhalla, or are they actually updating Odyssey with this too?
It's both.
That's interesting.
Ivor in Odyssey and Cassandra in Valhalla. I don't know if they're both out. I don't know, but there's basically like each game gets its crossover event.
Oh yeah, they are both out. The crossover story is actually released on December 14th. You can tell that I follow these very closely. The
crossover event with the Assassin's Creed 1 guy. He's my favorite.
Altair. Yeah, and then the Dawn of Ragnarok releases on March 10th. So, like 2 weeks after Elden Ring.
I love the Elden Ring.
We don't need a calendar. We just like, what is its proximity to Elden Ring?
Yeah, everything's relative to that release date. Here's a late edition from renowned
Speaking of
developer.
Elden Ring.
Yeah, from Software. Do you remember Armored Core? Remember that?
I always remember it 24/7. I remember. I have fond memories.
He dreams it.
Josh, give me the context here. Is Armored Core 6 confirmed, or are people just is this the Kool-Aid?
It is the most don't give me hope rumor, but apparently a Somerset user, Red Licorice or whatever. I don't know if he's this. Supposedly this person's credible. I don't know. They received a survey from Software on an unannounced mech combat game. And it's described to be a sci-fi world created by Miyazaki, 3-dimensional dynamic action, blah blah blah. And then like they kind of gave some description about like what this new thing is gonna be, and it's gonna have mechs, and it's gonna be more like. But it's going to be more like the Souls series. So it's going to be like maybe Souls-like flow to it with an Armored Core aesthetic and skin over it. I'm not sure, which a lot of people actually want. That actually sounds conceptually cool on paper. But it's just that thing of like, hey, are they working after Elden Ring? What is From Software doing? So it's just a new rumor that's popped up literally just the morning of this recording, of like, hey, is From Software working on Armored Core 6? I will not believe anything until I see it for myself, until it's officially announced. But it's one of those things. It's like,
so I'm not a big Armored Core fan, but I played 2 of the games. I played Armored Core 2, Another Age, and Armored Core 4, For Answer, and I really ended up enjoying both. Like if I had gone back to like get the ones that I missed, I think the only reason I never played Verdict Day was because it had like a more focus on online like clan battles or something like that, and not as much single player.
Focused. Yeah.
So like that's the only reason I skipped that, and I never played. What was the mech game that was Switch and then went to PC in the last year and a half? Oh yeah, I never played that just because the aesthetic never really like.
Yeah, I get it.
Just never like spoke to me. But Armored Core 6, if it reportedly exists, like who knows how far along it is, even if this is even true.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, that's just like safe to me. Like, all right, I can go back and try this because I know I've experienced Armored Core before in a limited capacity and really enjoyed it. So I would go back for 6.
Yeah, I'd be really interested to see. Like, technology has gone far and wide ever since the last we've heard from Armored Core, which was like Verdict
2012.
Like 2012, 2013. Yeah. So I'd be really, and From Software has learned a lot of things in development and what works and what doesn't since then. I'd be stoked if that was real, but I will not get my hopes up for anything until From Software tells me to my face, yes, we are playing. If Miyazaki rung my doorbell and be like, yes, Josh, we're fucking making Armored Core 6.
You'd be like, show me the receipts.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'm sure I won't fucking tell anyone. You just have to show me something. He's like, here, this is the sickest shit ever. I'm like, okay, you're still alright.
I remember a while back, like one of the From Software staff just put like an Armored Core header on his Twitter bio or something similar to it, just because he liked it, and people were like taking
he probably
that
worked on it
as like confirmation of a new game. You're like, no, I just like it.
People are thirsty at them. They want Armored Core.
I do feel for game developers who just want to like express themselves on social media, like the biggest like.
Yeah, like I'm proud of what I did on Armored Core, so I'm gonna put it in my header.
Or anything Sakurai likes.
Yeah, exactly. I was gonna reference Sakurai. Like Sakurai literally after the last DLC character came out for Smash Bros. He's like he went on social media. It's like it feels good to like be able to say things again on my social media without people pestering me about, is this a fucking DLC tease or whatever for Smash Ultimate?
Because he wasn't able to basically say about anything he liked because people would assume it was a tease.
Yeah, which I feel for that guy for multiple reasons. The way he fucking develops games is like fucking insane. But yeah, it's just, I always feel for game developers who aren't able to like express themselves as freely as they want because people are crazy.
All right, we have some sales updates from the last month, and for no reason at all, I'm going to go from these from highest number of sales to lowest number of sales, just because I'm a Chaos Gremlin. Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, remember that game? It has now sold 4.5 million copies, which
That's a lot of
I don't know. Like Dragon Ball's a big IP, and
Dragon Ball. Yeah, the people see Dragon Ball, they eat it up. Like Dragon Ball Fighters is like one of the most successful recent fighting games solely because of that IP. I mean, it's a cool fighting game, but like it has really bad netcode. But Dragon Ball sells, so it's cool to see that.
yeah. So in March 2020, that's when we got a first sales report of Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. It's hard to believe it was that long ago. I remember when George was so excited for that game. I miss that guy. At that point, it had sold 2 million units. Since then, it had a Switch launch in September of last year, and it's had like the DLC, like the Trunks stuff and some of the Dragon Ball Super stuff added to it. And so 4.5 million. I'm kind of not surprised because Dragon Ball's a big IP, and it ends up at the top of the list of the recent sales updates.
I remember Cullen saying that like Kakarot surprisingly had like a really good Switch port. Like he really liked the Switch release of Kakarot.
Yeah, he even streamed it in the staff chat for a bit, and it I can definitely vouch that the port looks really good.
Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity has surpassed 4 million units sold, and it was already the best Warriors game selling, right, Adam?
Yeah, like in its first week.
Yeah,
I think it sold like 3 million in a week. Something very close to that. And then like another million over the course of a year. Still, that's like ridiculous. So,
yeah, 3 million within its launch week. By March of last year, it was 3.7, and then I just over the last 9 months, it's kind of just capped out to that nice, even milestone of 4 million. So
it's a complete antithesis to Kakarot, though. Kakarot has a great Switch port. Calamity doesn't even even like in its only release on the Switch doesn't have a great version of that running. That's the reason why I'm having to touch this game after playing it. It's like, nah, I'm good on this performance.
I remember holiday, not this last month, but 12 months prior. I was watching some people play the local co-op of Hyrule Warriors: Age of Calamity, and it was some of the worst that I've seen. Like people, I think, exaggerate performance issues sometimes, and like, oh, I can't deal with my, 60 FPS, but bad frame jutter or whatever. But this was like sub 20. It was terrible. It was not good. But Hyrule does have a really nice art style. It almost, I remember when this game was first announced, that we thought it might be like this sort of like canon prequel, like legit Breath of the Wild tie-in, and then it would be shortly followed up on by an official announcement and release of the sequel. Like I remember people when this was first announced, there was a lot of genuine excitement for it, and I don't want to say like it's a bad game because I've never really played it other than barely touching it at a family gathering once. But it just seems like it kind of like it didn't have any staying power. Well, I don't know if that's even fair either. It sold 4 million, so
that's a lot of sales. I think maybe it's like one of those things like Roblox, for example. We don't fucking hear about Roblox at all, but it has a gigantic fucking following, So maybe Age of Calamity is like one of those things. Like maybe people just like fucking. There's just like a gigantic like fandom for it that just out of our sight.
Maybe it's just what else you're gonna play while waiting for the sequel to get any news on it.
True.
I guess the correct answer to that is Breath of the Wild again. You can play the new Sonic game, Sonic Rangers or Frontier or whatever the hell it's called.
I believe it's called Sonic of the Wild.
Oh
no, I don't think that's true.
I believe that. It's a Sonic of the Wild sequel, untitled.
Well, we'll have Pokemon of the Wild in a couple weeks. Attack on Titan from Koei Tecmo has sold 2.6 million units, and it has a free demo available, or I assume it's still available. This was posted back in late December, so I don't know if there was a time window on that demo. So this
release, sort of weird that the demo existed before, and then it was delisted. Now it's back. Like, okay, thanks.
Oh, neat. So this
you.
released in the before times. Like Zach Reese wrote our original review for Attack on Titan 2 back in 2019. So from the before everything 2020, from the eon long past, from the vestiges of 2019. So 2.6 million, obviously a pretty big IP with Attack on Titan. It's on a ton of platforms, including Stadia, of course. So
Hell yeah. But that the final part, the real final finale season is like starting to air like tomorrow again. Attack on Titan, I think.
I've seen the first 3 seasons and then I fell off. But maybe at some point I'll finish it out just out of completion's sake. It's kind of interesting. The 2 games that I want to discuss the most, this kind of shows the bubble that we live in sometimes, are the last 2 here that have sold the least. Bravely Default 2 has surpassed 1 million units sold. And obviously this released on Switch back in last February, followed by a semi-surprising PC release in September. So we learned that it had was just under a million in September in August, right ahead of the PC release, but now it has hit a million. And they shared a cool new illustration, again, using that art style that Adam likes, making the
I don't
announcement
know if this is fair, but I feel like it took longer to hit a million than I expected. It's like, oh, it was at 950,000 just before the Steam release. It should hit, a million easily after the Steam release, right? Because it just needs 50,000, which it should be able to hit just from being a Square Enix game alone. And then it took like 4 months. Like, that's slower than I would have expected if that's how long it took.
I feel like the sentiment around the game is like it's kind of petered out by the time the PC release came out. It's like it doesn't. It to me, Bravely Default 2 doesn't really have the staying power that like Bravely Default 1 had. It feels like.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was like even reflected on like our Game of the Year discussion.
Yeah, it didn't show up in the top 10.
I just think it just lost all that magic it used to have. Because when it first came out, the original Bravely Default, Square had this weird obsession with AAA graphics and stuff, and something like a more traditional RPG was unheard of at that time.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, at the very least, Team Asano could say, "Hey, we're pretty consistent on making million sellers." So that'll probably look good for them in front of Square Enix's eyes. It's like, all right. I really wonder how much the Dragon Quest III HD2D remake is gonna sell, because that shit is fucking popular in Japan. Dragon Quest III was like the breakout Dragon Quest game over there. So I'm really interested to see how that will do.
It's still one of the best Dragon Quest games.
It is true.
It's very good.
It's their FF6, really.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, Shin Megami Tensei 5 has surpassed 800,000 units sold, which does make it the best selling in the series, in the mainline series. So still, like, it sounds weird because you have to, again, we've talked about this in a couple different contexts about how we have to contextualize speaking about multi-millions versus high hundred
Exactly.
thousands.
That's the thing that really irks me about like gaming discussion these days, because a lot of like the reception to this news is like, oh, I'm really happy that like a series that I like is like a breakout hit. Like to me, like I see that it's like it's a breakout hit now. That's awesome. That's really cool. And like for a lot of people, it's like, oh, well, what is this? It didn't reach a million.
5 million. or
Yeah,
whatever.
it didn't reach a million. Yeah, what the hell? Do people like this? It's like, it really irks me when people say if it doesn't sell a million, then it's a failure or whatever. It's like, come on, really? So
And at some context, like Shin Megami Tensei 4, after being on sale for 2 years, had reached 600,000. So Shin Megami Tensei 5, in like a month and some change, has reached 800,000. So it'll hit the million mark. And obviously, if the rumors for the PC release come true, maybe we'll see something similar to Bravely Default, where it will go past the million mark. I don't know, either quickly or slowly. And speaking about,
release to be true. I really need that PC release to be real.
yeah, I was actually going to say, like, speaking of Switch games that don't perform the best, like, you might say, oh, it's a turn-based RPG, doesn't matter, but man, like, Shin Megami Tensei 5 could use a frame rate boost. It was frustrating at times. Still an excellent game. I think it was my number 2, and the sites doesn't have an official runner-up, but it was in the top 5 and could have contended. But very excellent game. It was our Readers' Poll winner. 800,000 is obviously a hit for that mainline series. Switch effect in full effect. Now we'll move on into release dates. So this is kind of appropriate, kind of looking forward to what 2022 will bring and getting some dates assigned for games that didn't have a date before, or games that were delayed and we were maybe expecting earlier, but now got pushed back into this year. I don't think that these are in order, and I'm not going to order them now, so I'll just go through the way we have them listed here. Relayer, which is the mech strategy RPG that was on our most anticipated list, will release worldwide on March 24th for PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4. So it was originally going to release in February, but was delayed just a little bit, just for polish and to basically confirm that they could get it as a global release.
This is a big like thank God, because now it's like not in contention for my time like over Elden Ring. Like it was originally February 17th before. I was like, it's a bit too close to comfort for Elden Ring, and now it's like, all right, you're safe and away from Elden Ring. Yeah, I'm really interested to. They finally announced that like yes, this will be like there will actually be worldwide releases on this. It's not just like some weird Japanese only release that has like a bunch of languages. Like no, this will actually have like official worldwide releases. And it's still being, published by Clouded Leopard Entertainment. So it's gonna be an interesting release. Like the more I see of it, the more I'm like, all right, sure, why not?
Yeah, just a little bit of like kind of behind the scenes. Sometimes it's hard to determine like release details exactly, because like before a couple weeks ago when this was officially announced, there was a Japanese press release that basically stated that this game was going to be released worldwide in English and various languages. So it's like, okay, it is, but there wasn't like any hard details on like, are we sure the Western release date is exactly the same? Or is it who's publishing it in the West? And like, is it Clouded Leopard, or it's kind of weird. And then finally they had like an English press release that basically said, all right, here it is. Like well after like the Japanese confirmation. So sometimes it gets a little tricky.
I believe it's digital only in the West, but have a physical release in
it is.
Japan. Yeah, I think that's how it's shaking out. It also does that new favorite trend that Japanese developers love to do, where there's a digital premium edition that's like in this case it's $75, and it'll have early access to the game for like 3 days or something. God damn it!
This is a single player game, right?
By the way, yes, it's a single player game. It just reminds me that SaGa did the same thing, but with Nocturne HD remaster last year.
I forgot about that. And they did it with Judgment too, right? Lost Judgment.
Yeah.
And Persona 5 Strikers.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
What game haven't they done it with? Okay. All right. So
They
Relayer.
didn't do it the SMT5. They did not do it the SMT5.
Oh, that's Nintendo putting their foot down, saying no. We're above this nonsense.
Yeah, I think so, actually.
So March 24th or the 21st, if you're going to pay $75 for the premium content.
Yeah.
A couple Switch ports. Death and Request 2 will launch for Nintendo Switch in February, the 8th in North America and the 11th in Europe. So,
Idea Factory is basically just slowly pumping out a Switch port of every one of their games.
Yep. Also,
sure.
Yeah, but also Idea Factory seems infamous on the Switch for not having great running games on the Switch.
Yeah.
Arc of Alchemist is basically unplayable in handheld mode.
We never like covered it formally, but I know we got someone. Well, I think Cullen tested out ports of like Mega Dimension, which is the fourth main game, and then also like Dragon Star Varnier, which is an Idea Factory game, and like neither of those play well on Switch. I don't know.
I feel like I should specify, because the way I phrased it might make people confused. Arc of Alchemist is unplayable on anything. Don't buy it and play it, but it's especially terrible in handheld mode on Switch.
I happen to like single-digit frame rates. Thank you very much.
A couple of Switch ports. We got Arc of Alchemist is.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyways, Idea Factory Switch ports. Neptunia, Cross, Senran, and Kagura, Ninja Wars. Oh, we just talked about that with the feature of the review that went up late last year. It is releasing for Nintendo Switch and Steam in spring of 2022 for North America and Europe.
Should I get that game?
I'm not going to tell you no.
I prefer the Japanese title. What was that Japanese title? Nin something?
Something Nin. Yeah. You always get the boring titles.
Sea of Stars. This was a Kickstarter game from early 2020 from the creators of The Messenger that looked like a really cool homage to like 16-bit era RPGs of the past of our childhood that we've had our eyes on for a while. It was already confirmed to have a PC and consoles release, though they didn't specify which consoles. During the Nintendo Indie World presentation in December, we did get another trailer for Sea of Stars, announcing that it would be coming to Switch for holiday of 2022. So basically the first console announcement out of that generic we will release on consoles. And I guess this is the first time we've had any sort of release window for this game, right, Adam? 2022?
Yeah, I believe so.
So not only did they say one of the consoles will be releasing on is Switch, but look for it in holiday of 2022. So we mentioned Sea of Stars earlier and like the anticipated discussion, and I just haven't thought about it in a while because, you know, sometimes the length of time between the Kickstarter campaigns and when we see these things, you know, come to fruition ends up being quite a while. This is one where I'm kind of like, I will not be surprised at all if this misses this year. Just
Now
out
that
of
you mentioned
precedent.
that, we did have a Kickstarter game that did make our anticipated list of the Eiyuden Chronicle Rising.
Oh yeah.
Well, it's like sort of. It's
Sort
like
of.
not the game people kickstarted.
Yeah,
It's the spin-off
not
story
Eiyuden
people
Chronicle.
kickstarted.
It's like the prequel side game. It's like the
The Bloodstain thing.
Yeah, the Curse of the Night. Like
Yeah.
the concept that was its original form was like, here's a little game before the main release, and it's for some people that was the better game. Curse of the Night.
Well, I prefer playing that because it's more of the old school Castlevania
Yeah.
free sort of thing, right?
Yeah, I never played the sequel. I need to get around to that.
Same here.
Here's a game that we got to talk about very briefly before we took our hiatus from the podcast last year. Omori is releasing for Nintendo Switch this spring as well. It originally released in December of 2020, so it was kind of, you know, in that no man's land for it would have been in contention for consideration this year, or sorry, in our most recent 12-month.
I feel like that's the
window.
game I let down the most last year because like I had every intention of getting through it, then like personal life happened, so I couldn't play it as much. So like I still want to get around to that game. I haven't because I've been stupidly obsessed with Another Eden at this point, which is like, oh, fuck, I need to play other games.
And speaking of Kickstarter, like Omori was originally kickstarted in 2014 and then
Yeah.
released on Steam in late 2020. And then in the same Indie World presentation as Sea of Stars in December of last year, we got Omori Switch's announcement for spring of 2022. All right, I think that covers it for Switch announcements. We did already talk about the Weird West delay. So Weird West was delayed. It was originally set to launch just in a couple days on January 11th. Probably by the time you listen to this, already past that date. But it was delayed to March 31st. We kind of already went over that. And the last thing here is that we're talking about Aniplex of America is going to release Disney Twisted Wonderland on January 20th for mobile devices. Josh, you know what this is? I don't know what this is.
This is a really interesting release. Imagine if Disney's villains were reimagined as hot anime boys.
All boys?
So like all boys, like the three hyenas.
Yes, like Maleficent is a hot boy now.
Yeah, they're a hot boy. The three hyenas, there's 3 different hot boys for them. Ursula, hot boy.
I will
hot
say,
anime
if
boy.
you say Disney villain, Hyena might be like 50th on the list, 60th.
What about Pete? Can we talk about Pete? What is Pete in this?
The site has like the designs for them, so if you want to check out what they look like Scar is really funny, like as a hot anime boy. He's like that super tan bad boy attitude hot anime boy thing. So I know this is very, very popular for some of my friends. This is like, I don't know how it is doing in Japan now, but like out of the gate, like for the first year in Japan, it was like very, very popular. I don't know if it's maintained that popularity in Japan, but it was one of those games. Like, I don't think will Disney allow this to be like localized in the West or see a Western release? And like, I guess so. Like, it's fine with them. So this is what I guess I'll like look into as like a curiosity when it comes out on January 20th, because like I don't really know much about it at all aside from hot anime boy Disney villains. That's all I know.
It's just so weird. It's like watch this trailer and it's like Disney's logo followed by Aniplex followed by everything else.
Yep. So
But is this all boys? Is there no girls in this at all?
from my understanding, there's no girls. It's all hot anime boys. That's my understanding on it.
Pretty much like a mobile Ultimate game.
Yeah. I don't know if like your player character is like the female. I don't know.
It's like, where's my Elsa? Where's my Elsa?
Hot
Also
anime
show up as
boy.
a hot anime boy.
Yep.
I love
Aksha,
it.
you say you don't like hot anime boys.
Not for me, man. Not for me. Sorry.
I didn't realize it's been out in Japan since March of 2020. So right when the pandemic started is when this released in Japan. I'm just noting the. Well, I guess the pandemic was earlier than that, but
Like,
March.
I'm just checking the
everything went to shit.
character list. It's like they don't have the main character. It's just all the side characters. Like
I don't know if there's like a main character person. That's the thing. I don't know if like there's like an actual player character. Like I said, all I really know about it is there's a lot of hot anime boys.
I
I'm
just like
looking
how
at the Alice in Wonderland roster, and I don't see Alice, and it's every side character.
Yeah, it's just Disney villains. Yeah.
Yeah. So
how
it's
many
like,
times have we said hot anime boy in the last 2 minutes?
I will not stop saying hot anime boys in this
well, I guess that's the title of today.
Okay,
Hot anime
if you
boys.
made it to the end
Oh,
and you're
no.
wondering where our title came from, congratulations. Or maybe I gave it away the game. Yeah, that was our last topic for the day. So a lot to go through from stuff that we had missed from our last regular podcast, all the end of the year financial reports from all the studios, some of the release date changes, some of the sales updates, couple studio letters to dig through, and everything else, going through all the features up on our site on our end. So obviously it just came out on our podcast services a couple days ago. We do have our full deliberations for everything that we decided for 2021. So if you see something on the list and you're wondering where's East 9 or where's Pathfinder or how in the world did Fantasian win or why is Nausea here, things like that, then give that a listen, because we had a lot of very fun, very enlightening, very spirited conversations and discussions basically about all of that. And some of the stuff in the commendations for those ended up being like, we obviously only report kind of a winner for each of those categories, but there's some like really close races there as well. Like we had some runners up that we don't recognize that could have easily taken those spots as well, which you won't get unless you listen to that podcast.
Nothing
And of course-
exploded on the way to uploading them to the services?
Nope. Even Spotify worked. Yeah. If you've been listening to this podcast on Spotify and you've been upset that it keeps cutting short, that has been a back and forth between me and some of the site admins for a few months now, because it was only Spotify and we couldn't identify the reasons why. I don't know if the proof that it worked with a 6.5 hour one is like, all right, we can rest easy now. So hopefully you're able to listen to what I'm saying right now as I speak into the microphone, because Spotify did not cut this podcast short. If not, then I will have to, deal with that and just keep poking until it gets fixed. But again, thank you so much for listening. Before I start the close up spiel, do you guys have any closing thoughts about as we go into a new year of the Tetracast, a new year of RPGs, 2022? I don't know, just Adam. Just to hand it off to someone.
Just to hand it off to someone. I don't
I
know.
thought you all start speaking at the same time and be like, yeah, I'm excited. I don't know.
I don't know why this is the first thing that came to my head, but I'm really interested in Triangle Strategy, but I don't want to play it on Switch. And I know Bravely Default came out 6 months later on PC, so I'm going to be like, it's going to release, and there's going to be temptation everywhere for me to buy it. I'm going to be like, no, I have to wait for PC. It's going to be hard. I don't know, that's the first thing I thought.
I'm interested.
I'm really
in
excited for that
Nausea.
game.
I'm interested in the Nausea PC release. I kind of, just mentioned it just now talking about the podcast for the Game of the Year. But now that we know it's getting a PC release, I have heard so many good things about it in our discussions. I'm interested in trying that out. So.
Man, well, there's a bunch of titles I'm interested in. Obviously, Elden Ring this year, Relayer, and Sunbreak. I'm wondering how many hours Sunbreak is gonna burn off of my life when it releases this summer.
Yeah.
I just hope that the Showa comes out in time. I want to play that.
The Showa American Story.
We're going to close out with that. Showa American Story.
Imagine when we get to our fucking top 10 of 2022 and Showa American Stories on it, it's like, what the fuck?
Best art. I don't know. I don't know what it would win. Or design and immersion. There you go.
Yeah. I was very immersed to being
Well,
Japanese America hybrid thing alternate.
All right. So to all of our listeners, thank you so much for sticking with us through the years. We're on a good streak here with the podcast, and we know a few people have been wondering when we'd be back. So here we are. Hopefully you enjoyed listening. All the usual things. We have our Discord readily available at discord.gg/RPG site to talk about all the upcoming releases for the year. Our usual social channels on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at RPG site. And we will be posting basically some of our results kind of piecemeal to our Twitter page across this week, but obviously we do have the full write-ups on the site and the podcast that I just mentioned, and we plan to be back here weekly. So let us know what you think. If you have any comments, we love reading those, even if they're not positive. We'll read everything. We've got thick skin, we can handle it, but we're interested in knowing what you think. What we can change or improve for you guys. But other than that, you'll hear from us next week. And as it goes without saying that 2022, I'm still going to ask you all to stay safe and take care, because things are not honestly any better. So take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.
Hot anime boys.